we explore the cruelest gift the universe could give a person: perfect knowledge of everything that's going to happen. What if Harry Potter, after the war, after the forest, after the walk back out, died and woke up as a 10-year-old boy in a cupboard under the stairs with every memory intact and every ability preserved? Not a second chance. A sentence. Because knowing every move your enemy will make sounds like winning until you understand the cost. You can never make a genuine connection again. You are surrounded by people you love who have never met you. You must watch them discover things you've known for years. And every time you change something to save someone, the future shifts, and you lose the only advantage you had. This is not a story about a boy who fixed everything. This is a story about what happens when fixing things is harder than living through them the first time. He woke in the cupboard, and the first thing he noticed was the silence. The external world had its own low hum of suburban machinery, and the house creaked the way houses did when they'd been settling for decades. The silence was internal. The constant background noise of the Horcrux, the faint, persistent wrongness that had lived behind his forehead for as long as he could remember, was present again. But below that was the silence of a mind that had just transitioned from death to life without adequate warning. Harry lay on the thin mattress and stared at the underside of the staircase and processed the available information. He was small. His hands were the hands of a child. His body occupied roughly 2/3 of the cupboard, which meant he was shorter than the last time he'd occupied this space, which meant he was younger. 10, probably, maybe 9. He remembered dying. He'd survived the forest, in the end had walked back out, had faced Voldemort in the Great Hall and watched the rebounded curse finish him. He remembered the years after, aura training, the cases. A Tuesday in November, 4 years after the war, a warehouse in Sheffield, a dark curse that moved faster than his shield. The impact. The floor. Ron's voice somewhere above him saying his name with the particular urgency that meant things were going very badly. Then, the cupboard. He reached up and touched his forehead. The scar was there. The Horcrux was there. The pressure. The wrongness. The passenger. In his last life it had been destroyed in the forest when Voldemort's killing curse hit the fragment instead of Harry. Here, it was back. Whole, humming with the subdued awareness of a piece of dark soul anchored to a living child. Harry pressed both palms flat against the mattress and breathed. The information sorted itself into categories. Things he knew. Every Horcrux location. Every Death Eater. Every betrayal. Every death. The complete operational picture of Voldemort's war drawn from 7 years of Hogwarts and 4 years of aftermath. He knew who was loyal. He knew who would break. He knew the sequence of events that had led to Voldemort's defeat. The Horcrux hunt, the sacrifice in the forest, the Elder One's allegiance, the rebounded curse. Things he didn't know. Why he was here. Whether the timeline would proceed identically if he didn't interfere. Whether his interference would create a better future or simply a different one with different casualties. Things he feared, that the answer to the last question was different casualties, and that the casualties might include people who had survived the first time. He lay in the cupboard and made a decision. Not the right decision, he wouldn't know for years whether it was the right decision, but the one he could live with. He would change things, carefully, one piece at a time. He would use what he knew to protect the people he loved, and he would accept that every change created unpredictable consequences, and he would deal with those consequences as they came. He would not try to do it alone. That was the difference. In his first life, Dumbledore had kept secrets, because secrets were weapons, and weapons worked best when concentrated. Harry had inherited that tendency, had carried the prophecy alone, had walked into the forest alone, had spent 7 years learning that the people who loved him were the people he most needed to protect from the truth. He was not going to do that again. He was going to need allies. Early. The problem was that every ally he might recruit was either a child who hadn't met him yet, an adult who had no reason to trust him, or a genius manipulator who would immediately recognize that something was very wrong with Harry Potter. Dumbledore? He was going to have to go to Dumbledore. Not yet. Not until he had a way to prove what he knew that didn't require the word of a 10-year-old, but soon. Aunt Petunia knocked on the cupboard door. "Get up," she said. Harry got up. He went into the kitchen and cooked eggs and tried to remember what it felt like to be 10 years old. He couldn't remember. His body was 10. His mind was 22. The gap between those two things was going to be a problem for every person who interacted with him from this point forward. He burned the eggs on purpose, because 10-year-old Harry burned eggs sometimes, and the Dursleys expected it. The first 60 days, Harry used them to verify that the timeline was proceeding as expected. He checked the newspapers, Muggle newspapers, which the Dursleys left on the kitchen table, for dates, events, anything that would confirm or deny that this was the same 1991 that had preceded his original first year at Hogwarts. Everything matched. The headlines, the weather, the cultural minutiae that he remembered from childhood with the sharpened recall of an adult mind looking back. He tested his abilities. This was dangerous. Doing magic outside Hogwarts triggered the trace, and the trace would alert the Ministry, and the Ministry would ask questions. But there were categories of magic the trace couldn't detect. Emotional magic, accidental magic, the kind of unconscious expression that all magical children produced. Harry had learned, in his years as an Auror, exactly where the line between detectable and undetectable fell. He practiced wandless magic under the covers at night. Small things, levitating a pencil, warming his hands, the kind of exercises that were below the trace's threshold. His adult abilities were fully intact. The magical core didn't care that the body was 10. The core was a function of the soul, and the soul had 22 years of training. He could cast a Patronus. He tested this once, in the garden at 3 a.m, and the silver stag erupted from his outstretched hand with a force that startled him. The Patronus was larger than he remembered. Brighter. More defined. As though the emotion powering it had gained density from the rebirth. He dismissed it quickly. A corporeal Patronus from a 10-year-old would raise questions he wasn't ready to answer. He thought about Peter Pettigrew. About Scabbers sitting in the Weasley house, sleeping on Ron's pillow, a traitor disguised as a pet. He could expose Pettigrew immediately, write an anonymous letter to the Ministry, provide details that only someone with inside knowledge could know. Sirius could be free within weeks. He didn't do it, not because the calculation was wrong, because the calculation was incomplete. Exposing Pettigrew now meant Pettigrew would try to run. If Pettigrew ran successfully, and Pettigrew was better at running than people gave him credit for, he would reach whatever remained of Voldemort's network and accelerate the Dark Lord's return. In the original timeline, Voldemort's return had happened on the schedule he knew, with preparation he understood, and Harry had been ready for it. If the schedule changed, every path branched. Every change cascaded. He had the map, but the map was only accurate if the territory stayed the same. He needed someone who could think about these problems with him, someone who understood magical strategy, who could evaluate cascading consequences, who had the power and the position to act on information without alerting Voldemort's network. Dumbledore? He needed Dumbledore, and he needed Dumbledore to believe him. Hagrid came on his birthday. The shack on the rock, the storm, the door knocked inward, the birthday cake with green icing. Happy birthday, Harry. Harry looked up at Hagrid from the floor of the shack and felt the first real emotion of his new life hit him with physical force. Hagrid was alive. In Harry's first timeline, Hagrid had survived the war, had carried Harry's body out of the forest, had been at the victory, had gone back to his hut and his creatures and his life. But the Hagrid standing in the doorway of the shack was the Hagrid of before the war, before Dumbledore's death, before the grief and the Carrows and the year of hiding in caves. This Hagrid hadn't lost anything yet. This Hagrid was still whole. "Harry," Hagrid said, beaming, "last time I saw you was only a baby." Harry had planned a response. A childlike response, appropriate to someone who had never heard of Hogwarts or magic. The plan dissolved. "I know," Harry said. Hagrid blinked. Harry scrambled for the recovery. I know. I was a baby. I don't remember." "Course ye don't," Hagrid said, but his eyes lingered on Harry's face for a moment longer than the conversation warranted. Hagrid was not the most perceptive person in the wizarding world, but he had an animal sense for things being off, and something had been off about Harry's response. Harry filed this. First mistake. 30 seconds in. The rest of the evening proceeded on script. Hagrid told Harry about Hogwarts, about magic, about his parents. Harry performed surprise and wonder, and the gradually dawning comprehension of a child learning that the world is larger than he knew. The performance was exhausting. Each individual deception was small, manageable, the kind of social calibration that any adult could do. The exhaustion was in the aggregate, in the constant management of what his face was doing and what his voice sounded like and what a 10-year-old boy would and wouldn't say. He was going to be doing this for years. Until he told someone. Until someone knew. The thought of years of this made him feel something he hadn't expected. Grief. That grief was there too. Familiar. He'd been carrying it. This was grief for the life he was about to live, which would be a performance from start to finish, a lie maintained for the sake of a timeline he was trying to preserve. In his first life, the lying had been Dumbledore's job. Now it was his. He understood Dumbledore better than he wanted to. Diagon Alley. Ollivander. The wand was the problem Harry had been dreading most. He walked into Ollivander's shop, knowing exactly what was going to happen. The pile of rejected wands, the growing curiosity on Ollivander's face, and then the holly wand with the phoenix feather core, and the connection, and Ollivander's speech about the brother wand. The problem was that the wand would recognize him. As a returning customer, not a new one. The wand had been his for 7 years. It knew his magic the way a dog knows its owner's scent. When he picked it up, the response would be wrong. Too immediate, too certain. The reunion of old friends rather than the tentative first contact of a new match. He'd thought about how to handle this for weeks. He hadn't found a good solution. The wands came and went. Harry fumbled through the rejections, unicorn, dragon heartstring, various cores and woods that sparked or sputtered. This part was manageable. Then Ollivander's eyes lit with the particular quality of a puzzle falling into place. "I wonder," Ollivander said, and brought out the holly wand. Harry picked it up. The wand blazed, not the gold and red sparks of a first meeting. Something deeper, warmer, the full-throated response of a wand that had been waiting. The warmth travelled up Harry's arm and settled in his chest, and the wand sang in his hand with the vibration of perfect recognition. Ollivander's face went through several things. Harry watched the old wand-maker's eyes move from curious to fascinated to something that was not quite alarm but was in the same neighbourhood. "The wand chooses the wizard," Ollivander said, slowly. "But this is unusual." "How so?" Harry said, trying to sound like a child asking an innocent question. "The bonding is typically exploratory," Ollivander said. "Tentative. A first meeting. What I just witnessed was not a first meeting." He looked at Harry with eyes that had been evaluating wand-wizard bonds for decades. That was a reunion. Harry said nothing. Curious, Ollivander said, in a different tone from the one Harry remembered. Less theatrical. More wary. Very curious. He wrapped the wand. He gave Harry the box. He did not mention the brother wand, the connection to Voldemort's wand, which he had mentioned the first time. Harry left the shop understanding that Ollivander had noticed something genuinely abnormal and had chosen not to discuss it. Ollivander would think about it. Ollivander would remember. One more person who'd noticed. The list was growing, and Harry hadn't even reached Hogwarts yet. The train. September 1st. Ron Weasley opened the compartment door and said, "Is it all right if I sit here? Everywhere else is full." Harry looked at him. Ron, 11 years old. Thin, freckled, wearing a jumper that was slightly too short in the sleeves. The same face, without the years on it. Without the scars from the brain attack in 5th year. Without the jaw he'd grow into by 16. Without the particular set of his mouth that came from years of being underestimated and years of proving the estimation wrong. Harry had held this man as he died, in a warehouse in Sheffield, on a Tuesday in November. Ron had been saying Harry's name. The last thing Harry had heard before the cupboard was Ron's voice. "Yeah," Harry said. "Sit down." Ron sat. They looked at each other. "I'm Ron. Ron Weasley. Harry Potter." Ron's eyes went to the scar. This was the moment, the first moment of their friendship, the beginning of everything. In the first timeline, this had been simple. Two boys, meeting, the start of something neither of them could have predicted. Now it was Harry, performing the beginning of something that had already lasted a lifetime. Is that really? Ron pointed at the scar. "Yeah," Harry said. "Wicked," Ron said. Harry smiled. He couldn't help it. The word, the tone, the unself-conscious delight. Ron at 11 was Ron at his most transparent, before the insecurities had deepened and the world had gotten complicated. He was all surface. You could see everything he was feeling because it hadn't occurred to him to hide anything. "Want a chocolate frog?" Harry said. "I haven't got any money. I'll buy when the trolley comes. I've got gold." Ron looked at him with the expression of someone navigating the space between wanting something and not wanting to owe someone. Harry had seen this expression 1,000 times. Ron's pride was the deepest thing about him, deeper than the insecurity, deeper than the loyalty, the absolute bedrock quality of someone who would rather go without than be pitied. "You don't have to," Ron said. "I want to," Harry said. "I don't know anyone else." That wasn't true. He knew everyone. But it was true enough for Ron, and Ron accepted it, and they sat together and talked about Quidditch and houses and family, and Harry performed the conversation with the part of his brain that was managing the surface, while the rest of him sat with the terrible joy of being near Ron again, and the terrible knowledge that this Ron didn't know him. He would know him. Eventually, Harry would earn this friendship again, the real way, through the accumulation of days and shared experiences and the slow building of trust that came from being consistently present. But right now, Ron was a stranger who thought Harry was a stranger, and the gap between those two positions was the loneliest distance Harry had ever crossed. Hermione came later. The toad, Neville, the bushy hair and the slightly too loud voice, and the quality of someone who had been alone long enough to compensate by being impossible to overlook. Has anyone seen a toad? A boy named Neville's lost one. Harry looked at her. Hermione Granger. 10 years old. The same intelligence, the same intensity, the same quality of looking at everything and everyone as though they were problems to be understood. She hadn't learned yet, wouldn't learn for months, maybe years, that some things weren't problems, and that some people didn't want to be understood in the way she understood things. "No," Harry said. "Sorry. I'm Harry. Hermione Granger." "Are you really Harry Potter?" "I've read about you in Modern Magical History," Harry said, and rise and fall of the dark arts. She stared at him. How did you know I was going to say that? Lucky guess, Harry said. You seem like someone who reads those books. I've read all the set texts, actually, she said, and quite a lot of supplementary material. I know, Harry said. She looked at him oddly. Ron looked at him oddly. Harry registered that he'd said I know about someone he'd just met, which was not something a person who had just met someone would say. I mean, I can tell, Harry said. You seem very well read. The recovery was adequate. Not perfect. She moved on, asking about the toad, and left the compartment, and Ron turned to Harry. She's a bit much, Ron said. She grows on you, Harry said. Ron stared at him. How would you know that? You just met her. Harry had made another mistake. The list was lengthening. Just a feeling, Harry said. You have a lot of feelings about people you just met, Ron said, observationally without edge. Ron at 11 didn't have the framework for suspicion. He just noticed things. I'm good at reading people, Harry said. Are you? Ron said. And the question had no edge to it, but it sat between them with a weight that Harry recognized as the weight of something Ron would come back to later. The sorting hat. The hat went on his head and said, "Ah." Different from the contemplation Harry remembered, difficult, very difficult of the original sorting. A single syllable of recognition. You've been here before, the hat said. Harry gripped the edges of the stool. Interesting, the hat said. I've sorted thousands of children. I have never sorted a child who has already been sorted. A pause, not the thinking pause of an uncertain decision, but the analytical pause of an intelligence encountering novel data. Your mind is layered. The surface is 10 years old. Underneath that is something considerably older. Gryffindor, Harry thought. Just put me in Gryffindor. I don't take instructions, the hat said. I sort. And what I find when I sort you is complicated bravery. Yes, in abundance. But also calculation. Strategy. The willingness to sacrifice and the intelligence to know when sacrifice is unnecessary. You have grown beyond Gryffindor's simple courage, Harry Potter. You have become something more nuanced. Gryffindor, Harry thought again. My friends are in Gryffindor. Your friends haven't been sorted yet. You don't have friends here. You have people you love who don't know you. The hat's accuracy was painful. Harry sat on the stool and held his mental ground. I need to be in Gryffindor, he thought. Not for the courage, for the access, for the people, for the plan. Tell me the plan, the hat said. I don't reveal my plans to hats, Harry thought. Then I'll find them myself, the hat said, and pushed deeper. Harry resisted. He couldn't block it completely. The hat had legitimate access to the minds it sorted, and blocking it entirely would raise exactly the kind of alarm he was trying to avoid. But he walled off the Horcrux information, the timeline details, the war. He gave the hat the surface, the courage, the loyalty, the stubbornness that had always been his most Gryffindor qualities. Incomplete, the hat said. You're hiding things. Everyone hides things, Harry thought. Not from me, the hat said, but it sounded less certain. Harry's occlumency, 22 years of practice, including 4 years of aura-grade mental discipline, was better than anything the hat had encountered in a child's mind. I do not reveal what I find, the hat said. That is my oldest law. But I will tell you this. Whatever you are doing, you cannot do it from isolation. The last time someone tried to manage the future of Hogwarts alone, he ended up with a torn soul and a snake for a companion. I'm not Voldemort, Harry thought. No, the hat said. You're considerably more dangerous. Voldemort wanted to live forever. You want to save everyone. The second ambition causes more damage than the first. A pause. Gryffindor. Harry walked to the Gryffindor table on legs that were not entirely steady. The hall applauded. Ron grinned. Percy shook his hand. He sat down and looked at the head table, where Dumbledore was watching him with the blue eyes that Harry knew better than almost any other eyes in the world, and the blue eyes were not twinkling. They were assessing. Dumbledore had noticed something during the sorting. The hat had taken too long. The hat had paused in unusual places. Something about the interaction between hat and boy had been wrong, and Dumbledore, who had been watching sortings for over a century, had seen it. Harry met his eyes. Held them. Soon, he thought. I'll come to you soon. Year 1. The performance. The performance was this. Harry Potter, the boy who lived, arriving at Hogwarts with no knowledge of magic, fumbling through first-year spells, making friends, learning about a world he'd never seen. The reality was this. Harry Potter, 22-year-old Aura, sitting in first-year classes listening to instruction he'd mastered years ago, while simultaneously maintaining a real-time tactical analysis of every person in the room, every corridor he walked through, every interaction he witnessed. The gap between performance and reality showed itself in small ways. He cast spells correctly on his first or second try rather than his third or fourth, which was fractionally too fast. He navigated the castle without getting lost, which first years were supposed to do regularly. He didn't flinch at Snape, which every Gryffindor first year did, and which Snape himself noted with the particular attention of a man who was professionally interested in things that didn't match expectations. Potter, Snape said, after the first potions class. Stay. Harry stayed. The classroom emptied. Snape stood at the front with his arms crossed and looked at Harry the way Snape looked at everything, with the focused contempt that was his default setting, and that Harry, from this distance of years and perspective, recognized as a defense mechanism so thoroughly integrated that Snape himself probably didn't know it was there anymore. You didn't react to me, Snape said. Sir? Harry said. Every child who walks into my classroom for the first time reacts to me, Snape said. Fear, hostility, curiosity, fascination, they react. You did not react. You looked at me as though, he searched for the word, as though you'd already decided what you thought of me. I'd heard about you, Harry said, from other students. You arrived 3 days ago, Snape said. You have not had sufficient time to form the kind of settled opinion I observed. Harry looked at Snape. At this man, who was, at this moment, 29 years old, deep in the most difficult double-agent role in wizarding history, carrying the weight of a love that had cost him everything, and a guilt that would kill him. Harry knew all of it. He knew how Snape's story ended. He knew the pensive memories. He knew the dough. I'm sorry, Harry said. I'll try to react more normally. That is not what Snape caught himself. His eyes narrowed. You are a peculiar child, Potter. I get that a lot, Harry said. He left the dungeon. Snape watched him go. Harry could feel the attention on his back, the analytical attention of Severus Snape, who was trained by both Dumbledore and Voldemort to detect deception, filing this interaction for further consideration. Another name on the list. The list was growing faster than Harry could manage. The Quirrell problem. Harry knew that Quirrell was hosting Voldemort. He knew about the Philosopher's Stone. He knew the timeline, the attempts at the stone throughout the year, the climax in June. He had a plan. The plan was simple. Tell Dumbledore. Not tell him everything. Tell him enough. The scar connection, the sensing of dark presence, the certainty that something was wrong with the defense professor. Use real information, the legitimate Horcrux scar interaction, to deliver a conclusion that Harry had arrived at through entirely different means. He went to Dumbledore's office in October. Come in, Harry, Dumbledore said, before Harry had knocked. The office was exactly as Harry remembered it, the silver instruments clicking, Fawkes on his perch, the pensive cabinet in the corner, the portraits of previous headmasters pretending to sleep. "Professor," Harry said, "I need to talk to you about Professor Quirrell." Dumbledore's expression didn't change. That was the tell, the absence of reaction, the controlled neutrality that Dumbledore deployed when he was paying the most attention. "What about Professor Quirrell?" Dumbledore said. "Something's wrong with him," Harry said. "My scar hurts when I'm near him. It hurts differently. He touched his forehead. It's like it's responding to something in him, something that shouldn't be there." Dumbledore regarded him. "Your scar," Dumbledore said. "It's connected to Voldemort," Harry said. I think I can feel him through the scar. And whatever I'm feeling, Quirrell is part of it." This was calculated. Harry was giving Dumbledore the scar connection information 7 years early, information that Dumbledore had not confirmed until Harry's 5th year, information that had shaped the occlumency lessons and the visions and the trap at the Department of Mysteries. Giving it now changed the timeline, but the change was controlled. Dumbledore learning about the connection earlier meant Dumbledore could prepare earlier. Dumbledore was quiet for a long time. The silver instruments clicked. "Harry," Dumbledore said, "how do you know that your scar is connected to Voldemort?" "I can feel it," Harry said, "when something dark is near." "The scar? You said it was connected to Voldemort specifically," Dumbledore said. "Not to dark magic in general, to Voldemort." That is a very precise claim for an 11-year-old to make. Harry felt the cold of being caught. Dumbledore's analytical mind, which Harry had spent years underestimating in his first life, was doing exactly what it was designed to do, finding the inconsistency. "I just know," Harry said. "It feels like him." "You have never met Voldemort," Dumbledore said. "You were 15 months old when he attacked your family. You cannot know what he feels like." The logic was flawless. Harry had no answer that didn't involve revealing information he wasn't ready to reveal. "I can't explain it," Harry said, "but I know I'm right." Dumbledore looked at him for a very long time. The blue eyes did the thing that Harry remembered. The gentle, profound, slightly too intimate scan that went past the surface and looked for whatever was underneath. "I believe," Dumbledore said, "that you are telling me the truth about your scar's response to Professor Quirrell. I also believe that you are not telling me the full truth about how you have arrived at your conclusions." He paused. "I will investigate your concern. In the meantime, I would ask you to be careful around Professor Quirrell, and I would ask you, when you are ready, to tell me the rest." "The rest of what?" Harry said. "The rest of everything," Dumbledore said. Harry left the office with the understanding that Dumbledore now occupied two positions: ally and threat. Ally because he would act on the Quirrell information. Threat because he had identified that Harry was hiding something significant, and Albus Dumbledore did not stop investigating significant hidden things until he understood them. The timeline had shifted. Harry had gained an ally and a pursuer in the same conversation. Quirrell was dealt with before Christmas. Harry never learnt the details. One evening in late November, Quirrell was at dinner. The next morning, he was not. McGonagall informed the students that Professor Quirrell had experienced a health crisis and was no longer able to teach, and that a replacement would be found for the spring term. The Philosopher's Stone was relocated. Harry didn't know where. Dumbledore made that decision independently, as he should have. Nobody went through the trapdoor. Nobody played giant chess. Nobody faced Voldemort in the mirror chamber. Ron was not injured. Hermione was not endangered. The bonding experience that had made the three of them inseparable in the original timeline did not occur. Harry had made things safer. He had also made things lonelier. Without the troll on Halloween, which Harry had prevented by keeping Hermione out of the bathroom, and without the trapdoor adventure, the three of them were friends, but not the intense, crisis-forged unit that Harry remembered. Ron liked Harry. Hermione respected Harry. Neither of them loved him yet, not in the way they would come to. That love had been built in the original timeline on shared danger, on the irreplaceable experience of facing something terrible together and surviving it. Harry had removed the terrible things. The survival bonding hadn't happened. The friendship was normal, warm, ordinary. Harry had not anticipated how much the ordinariness would hurt. Summer. The decision. Harry lay in the cupboard. He was back in the cupboard for the summer, because the Dursleys hadn't changed and because the blood protection required the return, and made a new decision. He was going to tell Dumbledore everything. Not because the performance was unsustainable, though it was. Not because the loneliness was too heavy, though it was. Because the strategic calculation had changed. In September, he believed that his knowledge was his primary advantage, and that sharing it would dilute it. 10 months of experience had taught him that the opposite was true. His knowledge was degrading, not the facts, which were fixed, but their applicability. Every change he'd made, the troll, the trapped, had shifted the timeline further from the version he knew. By September of year 2, the map he was working from would be significantly wrong in ways he couldn't predict. His knowledge was a melting asset. It was worth more today than it would be tomorrow. Sharing it with someone who could act on it, who had the power and the position and the strategic mind to convert it into action, was the highest value play available. He needed Dumbledore, and Dumbledore needed what Harry knew. The exchange would not be simple. Dumbledore would have questions. Dumbledore would have doubts. Dumbledore would take the information and filter it through his own strategic framework, which was not identical to Harry's, and the results would be decisions that Harry might disagree with. He would have to live with that. He had been making decisions alone for a year, and the results had been mixed at best. Safer, yes, but also flatter, less connected. The friendship group weaker rather than stronger because Harry had removed the catalysts that forged it. Alone was not working. He wrote a letter to Dumbledore in July. 3 sentences. Professor, I need to speak with you before the school year begins. The conversation will take several hours. Please bring the pensieve. The response came the next day, delivered by Fawkes directly to the cupboard, which caused Aunt Petunia to faint and Uncle Vernon to threaten legal action against the bird people. August 15th. My office. AD. August 15th. Dumbledore's office. Harry sat in the chair across from the headmaster and said, I've lived this before. Dumbledore, who had been reaching for a lemon drop, stopped. I died, Harry said, at 22. In my first life. I'm going to tell you everything about that life. Every year at Hogwarts, the war, the Horcruxes, all of it. I brought proof. You can use the pensieve on my memories, but I need you to listen first and react second, because the temptation to act immediately on what I tell you is going to be overwhelming, and the immediate action is almost certainly wrong. Dumbledore set the lemon drops down. How long has this been? He started. Since I was 10, Harry said. I woke up in the cupboard at the Dursleys with 22 years of memories and full adult magical capability. The sorting, Dumbledore said. The hat noticed, Harry said. So did Ollivander. So did Snape. So did you. I've been performing the role of a first-year student while carrying the complete operational picture of a war you haven't fought yet. Dumbledore was quiet. The instruments clicked. Horcruxes, Dumbledore said. You said Horcruxes. 7, Harry said. Voldemort split his soul 7 times. 6 objects and me. I'm the 7th, the one he didn't mean to make. The piece of his soul is in my scar. Dumbledore's face did something Harry had never seen in either lifetime. It went completely blank. Not managed blankness. The blankness of a man whose processing capacity had been exceeded. Show me, Dumbledore said. Harry showed him. The pensieve session took 4 hours. Harry gave Dumbledore everything, not chronologically, but strategically, starting with the Horcruxes, because the Horcruxes were the most time-sensitive information, then the war, then the details. The diary in the Malfoy library, the ring at the Gaunt Shack, the locket at Grimmauld Place, the cup in the Lestrange vault, the diadem in the Room of Requirement, the snake, the scar. He showed Dumbledore the forest, the walk, the King's Cross in between, where the other Dumbledore had sat on a bench and let Harry make his own choice about going back. He showed Dumbledore his own death, the curse on the ring, the withered hand, the slow dying, the arrangement with Snape, the tower, the fall. Dumbledore watched all of it. He came out of the pensieve looking older than Harry had ever seen him look. In either timeline. I arranged my own death, Dumbledore said. Yes, Harry said. I arranged for Severus to kill me, yes. And I sent you into the forest to die. You set it up so that I would choose to go, Harry said. There's a distinction. Is there? Dumbledore said. I thought so, Harry said. At the time. Dumbledore sat behind his desk with his hands folded and his eyes somewhere far away. Harry waited. He had learned in his first life that Dumbledore's silences were functional. The old man was processing, integrating, building the new picture that would guide his decisions going forward. The ring, Dumbledore said. You said the resurrection stone is in the ring. Don't touch it, Harry said. Dumbledore looked at him. That's how you die, Harry said. In my timeline. You go to the Gaunt Shack, you find the ring, and you put it on because it's the resurrection stone and you want to see your sister. The curse kills you, slowly, over a year, but it kills you. Dumbledore looked at his own hand, the healthy, undamaged hand. Ariana, he said, very quietly. I know about Ariana, Harry said. I know about Grindelwald. I know about the three-way duel and about what happened. I know all of it. He paused. I'm telling you not because you need to hear it, but because you need to know that I know, so that when I say don't touch the ring, you understand that I'm saying it with full knowledge of why you would want to. Dumbledore was quiet for a very long time. You are asking me, Dumbledore said, to give up the chance to see her. I'm asking you to stay alive, Harry said, because the version of this where you die involves me walking into a forest and a war that kills dozens of people who don't have to die. If you're alive, the war is different. If you're alive, I might not need the forest. You might, Dumbledore said. I might, Harry said, but I'd rather find out with you alive than with you dead. Dumbledore looked at the pensieve, at the swirling silver of 22 years of memory. I need time, Dumbledore said, to process what you've shown me. The strategic implications alone take the time, Harry said, but one thing needs to happen immediately. What? Sirius Black, Harry said. He's been in Azkaban for 10 years for a crime Peter Pettigrew committed. Pettigrew is alive. He's a rat animagus. He's currently sleeping on Ron Weasley's pillow at the Burrow, disguised as a pet called Scabbers. Dumbledore stared at him. Every day Sirius is in Azkaban is a day I could have prevented, Harry said. I've been carrying that for a year. I'm done carrying it. If we expose Pettigrew, he tries to run, Harry said. I know. I've thought about it. We need to capture him simultaneously with the exposure, no warning, no time to escape. A team that arrives at the Burrow, forces the transformation, and has him in custody before he can go anywhere. And if he escapes, he reaches Voldemort, Harry said. I know the risk. The risk of not acting is that Sirius spends another 2 years in Azkaban for something he didn't do. I've made the calculation. I've made it every day for a year. Free Sirius. Dumbledore looked at him. The look was complicated, the look of a man who had just been presented with a 22-year-old in an 11-year-old's body, making strategic calculations about acceptable risk and cascading consequences, and who recognized in the person across from him something that looked uncomfortably like himself. "Very well," Dumbledore said. "I'll arrange it." Sirius came home. The operation went as planned. Dumbledore, Lupin, and 4 Aurors arrived at the Burrow on a morning in late August. Molly Weasley had been informed, Arthur had been informed, the children were elsewhere. Scabbers was cornered in the kitchen. The forced transformation revealed Peter Pettigrew, small and shaking and trapped. Harry wasn't there for the capture. He was at the Dursleys, because a 12-year-old at a covert ministry operation would have raised questions. Sirius was at the ministry within the week. The trial, delayed by bureaucratic obstruction because the ministry did not enjoy admitting catastrophic errors, happened in September. Sirius Black was exonerated. Harry met him at Grimmauld Place on a Saturday afternoon in October. Dumbledore brought him. The house was dark, dusty, and thoroughly depressing, but Sirius was standing in the entrance hall with the restless energy of a man who had been let out of a cage and who hadn't figured out what to do with the freedom. He looked at Harry. Harry looked at him. This was the moment Harry had been dreading and wanting in equal measure for over a year. Sirius, alive, free, here, in the flesh, looking at him for the first time since the cupboard. "Harry," Sirius said. "Sirius," Harry said. And then Harry did the thing he'd been trying not to do for 13 months. He crossed the entrance hall and put his arms around Sirius and held on. Sirius went rigid for a moment, the response of a man who hadn't been touched with kindness in 10 years. Then he hugged back. Hard, too hard, the desperation of it evident in the grip. "You look like James," Sirius said. His voice was rough. "Merlin, you look." "I know," Harry said. "I've heard. But your eyes, Lily's." "I know." Sirius pulled back and looked at him. He had the hollow-eyed, too-thin appearance of someone who had been systematically drained of joy for a decade, and underneath it the sharp intelligence that Azkaban hadn't been able to touch. "You're strange," Sirius said. "I've heard that too," Harry said. "No," Sirius said. "I mean, you hugged me." "A stranger. You hugged me like you're not a stranger," Harry said. "You're my godfather." "We've never met," Sirius said. "I know," Harry said. "But you're still my godfather." Sirius looked at Dumbledore. Dumbledore was standing in the background with the expression of someone who was watching a chess game in which both players were making moves he hadn't anticipated. "He's an unusual child," Dumbledore said. "Yeah," Sirius said. "I can see that. The arrangement for custody was complex, but achievable. Harry would live with Sirius at Grimmauld Place during holidays, returning to the Dursleys briefly each summer to maintain the blood protection. Dumbledore negotiated the terms. Sirius accepted them with the barely contained fury of a man who was being told that his godson needed to return periodically to the people who'd kept him in a cupboard. "He doesn't want to go back," Sirius said. "He doesn't," Dumbledore agreed. "But the protection?" "I don't care about the protection," Sirius said. "You should," Dumbledore said, "because the protection is the reason Voldemort has not already returned to full power and killed Harry in his sleep." Sirius flinched, the flinch of a man who had been in Azkaban too long to properly process the scale of the threat. 2 weeks, Harry said. Both men looked at him. "I'll go back for part of the summer," Harry said. "Enough to keep the protection alive. The rest of the time, I'm here." "How do you know 2 weeks is?" Sirius started. "I've done research," Harry said, which was not exactly the truth, but was the truth he was offering. Sirius looked at Dumbledore. Dumbledore, who knew the real reason Harry was so well informed, inclined his head. "If the boy says 2 weeks," Dumbledore said, "I'm inclined to trust his judgment." Sirius didn't understand the exchange, but he accepted it. because the alternative was Harry spending another full summer in a cupboard, and Sirius Black was not a man who would accept that when any other option existed. Harry moved into Grimmauld Place. The house was dark and hostile and full of his mother-in-law's relatives' trophies, and it was the best home he'd ever had, because Sirius was in it. Years 2 through 4, the accumulation. Year 2 proceeded without the diary. Harry had the diary's location, the Malfoy library, but retrieving it required either breaking into Malfoy Manor, risky, complex, high profile, or waiting for Lucius Malfoy to deploy it, which, without Harry's interference, followed the original timeline of Lucius slipping it into a student's belongings at Flourish and Blotts. Harry intercepted it. In August, at the bookshop, he positioned himself next to Ginny's cauldron and watched Lucius Malfoy's hand slide the diary in during the scuffle with Arthur. After the Weasleys left, Harry reached into his own bag, where he'd placed a diversionary object in Ginny's cauldron's approximate position, and found the diary. He took it to Dumbledore that evening. Dumbledore looked at the diary, looked at Harry. "You knew he would do this," Dumbledore said. "It happened in my first timeline," Harry said. "Lucius gave it to Ginny Weasley. She was possessed for a year." "The basilisk? Basilisk?" Dumbledore said sharply. "There's a basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets," Harry said. "Slytherin's monster. It's been there for 1,000 years. In my first timeline, the diary opened the chamber and the basilisk attacked students. Hermione was petrified. I went into the chamber and killed it with the sword of Gryffindor. Dumbledore sat with this. The sword would have come to you," Dumbledore said. "Through the hat." "Yes," Harry said, "because you demonstrated sufficient courage. Yes, at 12 years old. I was actually 34 if you count both timelines," Harry said. Dumbledore looked at him. The look contained something that might, in another person, have been amusement. In Dumbledore, it was the recognition of someone who found very few things genuinely surprising and who had just encountered one. "The diary is a Horcrux," Dumbledore said. "Yes," Harry said, "destroy it. Basilisk venom or fiend fire." "We don't have basilisk venom," Dumbledore said. "There are shed fangs in the chamber," Harry said. "I can show you where the entrance is. The basilisk is still alive down there. It hasn't been released because the diary was intercepted." "You want me to go into the Chamber of Secrets?" Dumbledore said. "I want us to go," Harry said. "I can open it. I speak Parseltongue." Dumbledore was quiet again. The particular quiet of a man processing the sentence "I speak Parseltongue" from a 12-year-old and connecting it to the Horcrux in the boy's forehead. "Because of the soul fragment," Dumbledore said. "Yes," Harry said. "It gives me access to things that are riddles. The language. The connection. And when the fragment is removed, I'll lose the Parseltongue," Harry said. "I know." They went to the chamber. Harry opened the entrance. They descended together, the headmaster and the 12-year-old who had done this before in another life with a stolen sword and a phoenix. The basilisk was sleeping. Harry spoke to it in Parseltongue, using the resonance of the Horcrux fragment, the piece of Riddle's soul lending his voice an authority he didn't own. The basilisk recognized the language, the signature, the partial imprint of its master. Dumbledore collected the shed fang from the base of Slytherin's statue. They returned to the office. The diary screamed when the fang went through it. 1 Horcrux destroyed. 6 remaining. "We should accelerate," Harry said when the diary's ink had stopped bleeding. "I agree," Dumbledore said. "The ring, where is it?" "The Gaunt Shack. But the curse, you said I put it on because of the resurrection stone," Dumbledore said. "I will not put it on. I know now." "You said that in my timeline too," Harry said. Dumbledore looked at him. "You told yourself you wouldn't," Harry said, "and then you were standing in front of the stone that could bring Ariana back and you put it on anyway. Because knowing you shouldn't do something and being able to resist doing it are different things. You don't trust me, Dumbledore said. I trust you absolutely, Harry said. I don't trust the part of you that has spent 80 years missing your sister. Dumbledore was quiet for a very long time. Then, you should come with me, Dumbledore said. To the shack. To make sure I don't. Yes, Harry said. That's the plan. The ring was retrieved in December. Harry and Dumbledore went together. Dumbledore dismantled the protections, the curse, the wards, the layers of dark magic that Voldemort had used to guard the hiding place. Harry stood beside him and watched, and at the moment when the ring lay bare and the stone glinted and Dumbledore's hand moved toward it, "Professor," Harry said. Dumbledore stopped. His hand was inches from the ring. His eyes were bright. Too bright. "Thank you," Dumbledore said. They destroyed the ring with the basilisk fang Harry had brought from the chamber. The resurrection stone survived. The Hallow was more durable than the Horcrux enchantment. They took it back to Hogwarts and locked it in a warded box. 2 Horcruxes destroyed. 5 remaining. In January, they retrieved the locket from Grimmauld Place. Harry knew exactly where Kreacher had hidden it. The conversation with Kreacher was, Harry had dreaded this, because Kreacher's relationship with Regulus Black Sacrifice was one of the most painful things he'd encountered in his first timeline. "Kreacher," Harry said. The elf appeared. Ancient, hostile, muttering. "I know about Regulus," Harry said. Kreacher went still. "I know what he did," Harry said. "I know he went to the cave. I know he drank the potion. I know he told you to destroy the locket and that you couldn't, and that you've been trying for years." Kreacher was staring at him. Not with the usual hostility, with something Harry had never seen on the elf's face. Shock. "Master Regulus," Kreacher started, "was the bravest person in this family," Harry said, "and he wanted the locket destroyed." "I can destroy it, Kreacher. I have the means. Will you give it to me?" Kreacher gave it over. He wept. Harry let him weep. Dumbledore watched from the doorway. The locket was destroyed in Dumbledore's office. 3 down. 4 to go. By the end of Harry's second year, 3 Horcruxes had been eliminated, and the timeline had diverged significantly from the version Harry knew. Year 3, which in the original had been Sirius's escape, Lupin's teaching year, the Dementors, was radically different. Sirius was free. Lupin was teaching because Dumbledore had hired him as planned. Pettigrew was in Azkaban. The Dementors were never deployed because there was no escaped prisoner to hunt. Year 3 was peaceful. Harry found peace harder to manage than Crisis. In Crisis, his 22-year-old mind was an advantage. He could assess, plan, execute with a competence that kept him ahead of the situation. In Peace, the advantage became a burden. He sat in classes designed for 13-year-olds and learned things he'd mastered years ago, and the boredom was a corrosive weight. He trained in private. In the room of requirement, which he'd shown Dumbledore and which Dumbledore had warded for Harry's exclusive use, he practiced the spells and techniques that his 13-year-old body was capable of. His adult stamina was gone, and complex spell work that required physical endurance left him shaking. But the precision was there. The knowledge. The instinct. He taught Ron and Hermione. Unofficially, not as their professor, but in study sessions that gradually expanded beyond homework into practical defense, into spell work that wasn't in the curriculum, into the kind of preparation that Harry knew they would need. "Why are you teaching us this?" Hermione said, after a session where Harry had demonstrated non-verbal casting with an ease that was conspicuously beyond a third year's level. "Because it's useful," Harry said. "It's Newt-level magic," she said. "You're 13. Age is less important than ability," Harry said. "Harry," she said, "I'm going to ask you something, and I want an honest answer." All right, Harry said. How old are you really? Ron, who had been practicing shield charms on the other side of the room, stopped. Harry looked at his two best friends. At Hermione, who had been building her case for 2 years and who had clearly arrived at a conclusion. At Ron, who was standing very still with the expression of someone who had also arrived somewhere but had been waiting for someone else to say it first. 22, Harry said. The room was quiet. No, Hermione said. I mean, I believe you. But I need more than a number, Harry told them. Telling Ron and Hermione changed things. Without the disbelief or horror Harry had feared, or the sudden awkwardness of learning your friend was not what he appeared. The change was subtler, and, in some ways, more difficult. Hermione went into research mode. She demanded details, timelines, specifics. She cross-referenced Harry's memories against historical records. She built a comprehensive file of the divergences between Harry's first timeline and the current one, categorizing each change by magnitude, consequences, and confidence level. The diary was destroyed 2 years early, she said, working through a chart. That eliminates the Chamber of Secrets incident entirely. Ginny was never possessed. Colin Creevey was never petrified. I was never petrified. She looked up. In your timeline, I was lying in a hospital bed with a mirror in my hand because I'd figured out it was a basilisk. Yes, Harry said. That's very me, she said. It was extremely you, Harry said. Ron's response was different. Ron didn't build charts. Ron sat with it. He sat with it for 3 days, during which he was quieter than Harry had ever seen him. Then, on the 4th day, at breakfast, Ron said, Sheffield. Harry looked at him. You said you died in Sheffield, Ron said. At 22. On a job. Yes, Harry said. Was I there? Ron said. Harry met his eyes. You were the last person I heard. Ron was quiet for a moment. Then, Good, Harry said. If you're going to die, Ron said, your best mate should be the last voice you hear. Harry looked at his plate, at the toast and the eggs, and the perfectly ordinary Monday morning that was happening around a conversation about his death. I missed you, Harry said, when I woke up. In the cupboard. You were the first person I missed. Of course I was, Ron said, and grinned, and stole a piece of Harry's toast, and the conversation was over because Ron had decided it was over, and because Ron's instinct for when to stop talking about something was, as always, better than anyone else's. Year 4. The tournament. This was the pivotal year, and Harry and Dumbledore had been planning for it since August of Year 1. The Triwizard Tournament. Barty Crouch Jr. The Goblet of Fire. The Graveyard. In the original timeline, this sequence had resulted in Voldemort's return, the resurrection ritual, Harry's blood, the new body. Harry had spent 2 years with Dumbledore analysing whether to prevent or allow the return. The analysis had produced a conclusion that Harry hated the return should be allowed, not because Voldemort's return was desirable, because the alternative, prevention, was worse. If Voldemort's return was prevented now, it would happen later, through a mechanism Harry couldn't predict, at a time when Harry's knowledge of the future was even more degraded. The return in the graveyard had specific features that Harry could exploit. The use of Harry's blood, which extended the sacrificial protection into Voldemort's body, creating the mechanism that had allowed Harry to survive the forest. If we prevent the graveyard, Harry said to Dumbledore, in the summer, before 4th year, we lose the blood protection. And without the blood protection, you cannot survive the destruction of the Horcrux in your scar, Dumbledore said. Unless we find another way, Harry said. Which we're looking for. Which we have not yet found, Dumbledore said. Which we have not yet found, Harry agreed. The alternative to the forest, the soul separation that Dumbledore was researching, the theoretical possibility of removing the Horcrux without killing Harry, remained theoretical. Dumbledore had been working on it for 2 years with the best unspeakables in the Department of Mysteries, and the conclusion was the same each time. The Horcrux was too deeply integrated. The only known method of destruction was Voldemort's own killing curse, directed at the fragment rather than at Harry, which required the sacrificial protection to function as a shield for Harry's soul while the fragment was destroyed. The forest, Harry said. Or the blood, Dumbledore said. Both, Harry said. The blood in the graveyard, then the forest later. Unless we find another way between now and then, Dumbledore said. Unless, Harry said. They let the tournament proceed. They let Crouch Jr. infiltrate the school because identifying and removing Crouch Jr. would alert Voldemort that his plan had been compromised, and an alerted Voldemort would find another method. Harry entered the tournament. He competed in the tasks, knowing, with the grim certainty of repetition, exactly what each one contained. He performed adequately rather than brilliantly, holding back enough to not attract the wrong kind of attention, while advancing enough to reach the final task. Cedric Diggory. This was the piece Harry could not leave unchanged. In the original timeline, Cedric had touched the cup alongside Harry and had been killed in the graveyard. Harry had carried Cedric's body back. The memory of Cedric falling, the sound, the angle, the casual wrongness of a killing curse hitting a 17-year-old was one of the memories Harry had been carrying for 8 years. He was not going to let it happen again. "You can't take the cup," Harry said. They were in the corridor outside the Great Hall, 2 days before the third task. Cedric looked at him with the polite confusion of someone who had been given strange advice by a younger student. "What?" Cedric said. "The cup in the maze," Harry said. "Don't touch it. Let me get there first." "Harry, the whole point of the task is—" "The cup is a trap," Harry said. Cedric stared at him. "I can't explain everything," Harry said, "but I know things I shouldn't know, and one of the things I know is that the cup in the maze is not a trophy. It's a portkey. And the place it goes is a place where you die." "That's—" Cedric stopped. "How could you possibly, Cedric?" Harry said. "I am asking you. As a favour. As something more important than a favour. Don't touch the cup." Cedric looked at him for a long time. He was 17, decent, smart, and he was seeing something in Harry's face that convinced him the request was genuine. "You really believe that?" Cedric said. "I know it," Harry said. "All right," Cedric said. "I'll stay back." Harry entered the maze. He reached the cup first. He touched it. The graveyard. The graveyard was the same, the tombstones, the yew trees, the cauldron, but the figure waiting was not the figure Harry remembered. In the original timeline, Peter Pettigrew had performed the ritual, but Pettigrew was in Azkaban. Voldemort had adapted. A different servant, Barty Crouch Jr., who had apparently divided his duties between Hogwarts and the graveyard, was there carrying the diminished form of the Dark Lord. The ritual began. Bone of the father, unknowingly given. The ground split. The bone rose. Flesh of the servant, willingly given. Crouch Jr. raised a knife and removed his own hand without hesitation. No scream, not even a flinch. The fanaticism that had kept him loyal through years in Azkaban and years under his father's imperious held. He gave the hand the way a zealot gives anything, completely, without doubt. Pettigrew had wept through this part. Crouch Jr. smiled. Harry was tied to the headstone. He let it happen. He had let it happen before and was letting it happen again, and the cold horror of choosing to let someone hurt you because the hurting is strategically necessary was not something that got easier with repetition. Blood of the enemy, forcibly taken, the knife, the arm, the blood falling into the cauldron. Harry gritted his teeth and accepted the cost. Voldemort rose. The same red eyes, the same flat face, the same inhuman quality of a person who had made himself into something other than a person and who didn't understand what he'd lost in the process. Harry Potter, Voldemort said. Tom, Harry said. The ones connected. Priori incantatem. The golden thread, the ghost echoes of Voldemort's victims, Harry's parents, the old man from the Riddle House, others. They looked at Harry with the same desperate encouragement they'd shown the first time, and Harry's heart cracked along the same fault line it had cracked before. He broke the connection. He grabbed the cup. The portkey activated. He was back at Hogwarts. Alone, shaking, bleeding from the arm, carrying the knowledge that Voldemort was back and that the blood had been taken, and that the sacrificial protection was now extended into Voldemort's new body. The mechanism was in place. The forest remained a viable option. He had saved Cedric. The rest of the cost was the same as before. Year 5. The Ministry, the War, the Telling. The Ministry denied Voldemort's return. Fudge, predictably, chose comfortable delusion over uncomfortable truth. Umbridge came to Hogwarts. But the configuration was different. Dumbledore was alive, forewarned, and operating from a position of strategic advantage that the first timeline Dumbledore had never had. The Order reformed immediately, not gradually, not reactively, but as a pre-planned response to a scenario that Dumbledore had known was coming for 3 years. Sirius was at the centre of the Order's operations. Free, healthy, with 2 years of recovery and the fierce purpose of someone who had lost too much time and was determined not to lose more. He and Lupin worked as the Order's tactical team, and the combination of Sirius's recklessness with Lupin's caution produced results that neither could have achieved alone. Umbridge arrived at Hogwarts and found a school that was considerably more prepared for her than the school in Harry's first timeline had been. "She's inspecting the defense classes," Hermione said. "I know," Harry said. "She's going to try to take control of the school's governance," Harry said, "through educational decrees. She'll try to make herself High Inquisitor and then Headmistress." Hermione looked at him. She had, by this point, developed the habit of not asking Harry how he knew things, and instead asking what he planned to do about them. "What do we do?" she said. "We let her," Harry said. "Up to a point. The decrees are visible. They make the Ministry's position obvious. The more extreme she gets, the more people see what the Ministry actually is." "People will get hurt," Ron said. "The detentions with the blood quill, nobody is using a blood quill this time," Harry said. "I've spoken to Dumbledore. The moment she deploys it, she's arrested." "Arrested by whom?" Hermione said. "She has Ministry backing." "Arrested by the Aurors who are loyal to the old Ministry," Harry said. "Kingsley Shacklebolt, Nymphadora Tonks, and 4 others who Dumbledore has been talking to for 2 years. They're waiting for Umbridge to cross the line. The blood quill is the line." "You planned this years ago," Hermione said. "Dumbledore and I planned it," Harry said. "Together? That's..." Hermione stopped. "That's extraordinary. You've been preparing for this since you were 12. "Since I was 10, Harry said. "I've been carrying this since the cupboard." Umbridge lasted 6 weeks. She deployed the blood quill on a Tuesday evening in October. By Thursday morning, she was in Ministry custody, the educational decrees were revoked, and the school was back under Dumbledore's control. It was neater than the first timeline. Cleaner, less painful. It was also, Harry understood, less catalytic. The original Umbridge year, terrible as it was, had produced Dumbledore's army. The Dar had given dozens of students practical defense training that had saved lives in the Battle of Hogwarts. The lessons, the camaraderie, the experience of resistance, all of it had been forged by Umbridge's tyranny. Without a full year of Umbridge, the Dar hadn't happened. The students were safer in the short term and less prepared in the long term. Harry had traded future readiness for present safety. Again, we need to train them, Harry said to Dumbledore in November. The students. Defense. Real defense, not textbook material. The curriculum won't prepare them for what's coming, Harry said. We need the Dar. The Dar? Dumbledore's army, Harry said, and was aware that the name had not been invented yet in this timeline. A student defense group. Practical work. Combat preparation. Dumbledore considered this. If I authorize it, don't authorize it, Harry said. Let it happen organically. Students organizing themselves. Neville and Hermione and Ron and me teaching the younger years. If it comes from the students, it means more than if it comes from the administration. You want me to allow what is essentially a student militia to form within my school, Dumbledore said. I want you to allow students to learn to defend themselves against a war that's coming whether they're ready or not, Harry said. Dumbledore was quiet. In your timeline, Dumbledore said, how many of them survived the final battle? Most of them, Harry said, because of the Dar, because they'd been training since 5th year. And without the Dar? Without the Dar, they would have been targets, Harry said, not fighters. Dumbledore nodded. Organize it, he said. Harry organized it. The Horcrux hunt, years 5 and 6. The cup was retrieved from Gringotts in February of Harry's 5th year. This was the operation that had required the most planning. Gringotts' security was formidable, and the Lestrange vault was among the most heavily protected in the bank. Dumbledore handled it. Through negotiation rather than infiltration. The goblins were not allies of Voldemort. They were allies of themselves. And Dumbledore, who had spent decades building relationships with the goblin banking community, was able to negotiate access through channels that Harry, in his first timeline, had not known existed. The goblins understand Horcruxes? Harry said. The goblins understand dark objects, Dumbledore said. They have encountered objects similar to Horcruxes in their own history. When I explained what was in the vault, what it meant, what it would do if left intact, the negotiations became considerably more straightforward. In my timeline, we broke in on a dragon, Harry said. Yes, Dumbledore said. I imagine that was effective, but diplomatically catastrophic. We weren't in a position to be diplomatic, Harry said. No, Dumbledore said. But we are now. The cup was destroyed. 4 down. 3 remaining. The diadem, the snake, and the scar. The diadem was retrieved from the Room of Requirement in May. Harry and Ron went in together. Harry because he knew where it was. Ron because Ron had refused to let Harry go alone. Every time you do something dangerous, you go alone, Ron said. That stops now. Ron, I don't care what happened in your first timeline, Ron said. In this one, I'm your best friend and I'm going with you. Harry looked at him, at Ron Weasley, who was 15 and who was, in every essential quality, the same person he'd been at every age Harry had known him. Loyal to the point of stubbornness, brave without recognizing it, refusing to be left behind. All right, Harry said, let's go. The diadem was where Harry expected it. The room of hidden things, vast and cluttered with centuries of accumulated detritus, and the diadem on its bust in the same location it had always been. Ron looked at it. That's it? That's it, Harry said. Bit anticlimactic, Ron said. They're not all climactic, Harry said. Sometimes defeating a fragment of the darkest wizard of the century is just picking up a tiara. That's what I'll tell my grandchildren, Ron said. I helped defeat Voldemort by picking up a tiara. Harry laughed. The genuine laugh, the one that Ron could always produce, in any timeline, because making Harry laugh was one of Ron's deepest talents and it operated independently of circumstances. They destroyed the diadem. 5 down. 2 remaining. Nagini and the scar. The scar. This was the problem that had been waiting at the centre of everything since the cupboard. The Horcrux in Harry's scar could not be removed by basilisk venom or fiend fire. Both would kill Harry. The only known method of destruction was Voldemort's own killing curse, directed at the fragment, with the sacrificial protection acting as a shield for Harry's soul. This was the forest. This was the walk. This was the thing Harry had done once before and was facing the prospect of doing again. Dumbledore had been researching alternatives for 4 years. The Unspeakables had been working on it. The combined intellectual resources of Dumbledore, the Department of Mysteries, and every text in the Hogwarts restricted section had been brought to bear on a single question. Could the Horcrux in Harry's scar be destroyed without killing Harry? In January of 6th year, Dumbledore called Harry to his office. "Severus believes he can do it," Dumbledore said. Harry went cold. "Snape, Severus has been researching the soul fragment boundary independently," Dumbledore said. "He's been working from the legitimacy angle. His understanding of the interface between minds is, I believe, unique." "You told Snape about the Horcrux," Harry said. "I told Severus what he needed to know to pursue the research," Dumbledore said. "I did not tell him about your temporal situation." "What does he think I am?" "He thinks you are a child with a piece of Voldemort's soul in your head," Dumbledore said, "which is accurate. He does not know the rest." "Does he need to know the rest?" "For the procedure, no," Dumbledore said. "For his willingness to perform it, perhaps." "What do you mean?" "Severus's willingness to help you is complicated," Dumbledore said. "He helps you because of your mother. His feelings about you personally are hostile," Harry said. "Layered," Dumbledore said. "If he knew the full truth that you are carrying 22 years of memory, that you have seen his own death, that you know about his feelings for Lily, the dynamic would change." "In what direction?" "I genuinely don't know," Dumbledore said. Harry thought about this, about Snape, about the doe, about the man who had spent his entire adult life atoning for a mistake he'd made as a teenager, and who had died in a boathouse with Harry's mother's eyes as the last thing he saw. "Tell him," Harry said. "Are you certain?" "He deserves to know," Harry said. "Not for the procedure. For himself." Telling Snape. This conversation happened in Dumbledore's office in February. Snape arrived expecting a research briefing. He found Harry sitting in the chair opposite Dumbledore. "Severus," Dumbledore said. "Sit down." "I prefer." "Sit down, Severus," Dumbledore said, with a gentleness that made the instruction impossible to disobey. Snape sat. He looked between them. "Potter has something to tell you," Dumbledore said. "What has the boy done now?" Snape said, in the voice of someone who expected the answer to involve property damage or broken rules. "I know about my mother," Harry said. The room temperature dropped. "I know you loved her," Harry said. "I know you went to Voldemort and asked him to spare her. I know you went to Dumbledore when he didn't. I know every Patronus you've ever cast has been a doe." Snape didn't move, didn't breathe. "I know about the unbreakable vow you haven't made yet in this timeline," Harry said. "About Draco Malfoy and the tower and the arrangement to kill Dumbledore. I know about the boathouse. I know about the snake. I know what you said when you were dying." "How?" Snape said. One word. No inflection. "Because I've lived this before," Harry said. "I'm 22 years old. I've been through Hogwarts once, fought the war, survived it, and died 4 years later. I woke up in a cupboard at 10 years old with everything I knew intact." Snape looked at Dumbledore. It's true," Dumbledore said. "I've verified it. Pensieve memories, details that a child could not fabricate." Snape turned back to Harry. The black eyes, usually so carefully controlled, the expression managed with the discipline of decades, were unguarded. Harry could see the raw surface underneath the management, and what was there was something he had not expected. Fear. Not fear of Harry. Fear of being known. "You saw my memories," Snape said. "You gave them to me," Harry said, "as you were dying. You gave me everything. The whole story, Lily, the prophecy, Dumbledore's plan, the dough, all of it." "Why?" Snape said. "Because you needed me to know," Harry said. "Because you'd spent your whole life hiding the truth and you were dying and you wanted someone to know who you really were." Snape was very still. "I named my son after you," Harry said. The stillness broke. Something moved across Snape's face, not softening, not warmth, something more violent and more vulnerable than either of those things. "You... what? Albus Severus Potter," Harry said. "In my first timeline. I told him you were the bravest man I ever knew." The silence in the office was absolute. "That was a terrible name," Snape said. Harry laughed. The surprise of it, the sharp, unexpected bark of laughter, broke something in the room. Dumbledore made a sound that might have been a cough, or might have been something else entirely. "Yeah," Harry said. "My wife thought so too." Snape looked at him, really looked at him, not with the habitual contempt, not with the managed hostility, with the attention of a man seeing something clearly for the first time. "You are not your father," Snape said. "I know," Harry said. "You are considerably more annoying," Snape said. "I've been told," Harry said. "The procedure," Snape said. He shifted into professional mode with the speed of someone who was very practiced at redirecting away from emotion. "The soul fragment boundary. I believe I can separate it. The risk?" "I know the risk," Harry said. "Then you know that if I fail, the damage to your soul would be permanent or fatal," Harry said. "Yes, you would trust me with this," Snape said. Not a question. An expression of genuine confusion. "You spent 20 years protecting me because of my mother," Harry said. "You walked into a boathouse knowing Voldemort was going to kill you, and you went anyway because it was part of the plan. You died for the right side without anyone knowing you were on it." He paused. "Yes, I trust you." Snape was quiet for a long time. "March," he said. "I'll need until March to prepare." The procedure. It happened on a Saturday evening in March. Dumbledore's office. The silver instruments removed from the desk. Harry lying flat on a conjured table with Snape standing over him and Dumbledore standing at a distance that was precisely calculated, close enough to intervene, far enough to not interfere. "If this goes wrong," Snape started. "It won't," Harry said. "If it does, then I'll walk into the forest," Harry said. "Same as before. But I don't think it's going to go wrong." "Your confidence is unwarranted," Snape said. "My confidence is based on knowing you for 22 years, Harry said, "which is longer than you've known yourself if you count both timelines." Snape looked at him with an expression that was somewhere between exasperation and something else. "Close your eyes," Snape said. Harry closed his eyes. Snape's wand touched his forehead. The legilimency began, not the aggressive, adversarial probing of the occlumency lessons Harry remembered from his first timeline, but something utterly different, surgical, precise, the mind, equivalent of a scalpel rather than a battering ram. Snape moved through Harry's mind with extraordinary care, past the surface thoughts, past the memories, past the 22 years of accumulated experience, down to the place where the Horcrux was anchored. Harry could feel it, the boundary between his soul and the fragment of Voldemort's. It was not clean. Years of coexistence had blurred the edges, the two souls growing into each other the way tree roots grew into stone. Separating them required cutting along a line that was not entirely visible. Snape cut. The pain was not physical, not exactly. It was the pain of separation, of something being removed that had been part of Harry for so long that its absence would leave a gap. 3 hours. 3 hours of Snape working at the boundary with the precision of a man who was very, very good at something very, very difficult. At the end, Harry felt it. The snap. The fragment coming free. The sudden, shocking silence where the Horcrux had been. He opened his eyes. Snape was sitting in a chair. He was grey with exhaustion. His hands were shaking. Is it? Harry reached up and touched his scar. The scar was there. The pressure was gone. The passenger was gone. The fragment of Tom Riddle that had lived in Harry's head for 22 years, for 34 years, counting both timelines, was gone. Done, Snape said. Harry lay on the table and stared at the ceiling. The constellations moved slowly across the painted surface. The silence in his head was complete and total and strange. He tried to speak in Parseltongue. Nothing came. The language was gone. Thank you, Harry said. Don't, Snape said. I'm going to thank you, Harry said. You can't stop me. I can try, Snape said. Dumbledore was smiling. Not the twinkle, the real smile, the one that broke through the management. The smile of a man who had been carrying a weight, the weight of Harry's scar, of the forest, of the walk, and who had just felt it lift. One remaining, Dumbledore said. Nagini, Harry said. Nagini, Dumbledore agreed. And then Tom himself. The battle. It came in May. Year 7 had been the final preparation. The Order at full strength, the Dar trained, the Ministry slowly, painfully, publicly acknowledging that Voldemort was back and that the war was real. The Battle of Hogwarts was different from the one Harry remembered. Not in its essential nature, Voldemort attacking the school, the final confrontation, the cascade of duels and defences, but in its configuration. Dumbledore was alive and fighting. This changed everything. The most powerful wizard of the age, standing at the front of the school's defences, meant that Voldemort had to engage directly rather than directing from behind. The battle between Dumbledore and Voldemort's forces was the central pillar around which everything else organised. Sirius fought. Lupin fought. Tonks fought. The three of them moving through the battle with the coordination of people who had been training together for years. Because they had. Because the Order had been preparing since Harry's second year. Fred and George fought. Both of them, alive, creative, deploying products from their joke shop as improvised defensive weapons with an ingenuity that the Death Eaters had no framework for understanding. Neville killed Nagini. Same as before, some things were constants. The sword of Gryffindor, the snake, the moment. Neville Longbottom, who had been brave since a troll in a bathroom in first year, completing the task that was always going to be his. The last Horcrux was gone. Harry faced Voldemort in the Great Hall. It's over, Tom, Harry said. Nothing is over, the diary. The ring. The locket. The cup. The diadem. The snake. Harry touched his scar. And this. They're all gone. Voldemort's face did something that Harry had not seen in either timeline, genuine terror. Not the theatrical fury, not the cold calculation. Terror. That is not possible, Voldemort said. You made 7 anchors because you were afraid to die, Harry said. You were 16 when you made the first one. You were afraid and you were alone and you decided that the solution to being afraid was to never die. But you were wrong. The solution to being afraid isn't immortality. It's having someone to be afraid with. Sentiment, Voldemort said, and raised his wand. Love, Harry said, which you've never understood, and which is the reason you're standing here alone while I'm standing here with. He gestured at the hall, at the people behind him, at Ron and Hermione and Sirius and Lupin and Neville and the Weasleys and the Order and the Dar and the entire assembled community of people who had chosen to be here. Everyone, Harry said. The duel. The Elder Wand, Dumbledore's wand, never disarmed, never transferred, refusing to fight for Voldemort. The curse rebounding. The falling. Voldemort died. not dramatically, not with the theatrical horror of a Dark Lord meeting his end. He fell the way anyone fell, like a person, suddenly and finally subject to the same rules as everyone else. Harry stood in the great hall and breathed. After, the victory was messier than the first time. Fewer people died. Significantly fewer. The preparation and Dumbledore's presence having altered the mathematics substantially. But the political aftermath was more complex, because the war had ended without the catharsis of maximum crisis. The Ministry transitioned awkwardly. The Death Eaters scattered rather than being captured in a single climactic battle. Fred was alive. Fred was alive and standing next to George, and the two of them were covered in dust and laughing about something, and Harry looked at them and felt the devastating relief of a person who had changed the outcome of something that had haunted them for years. Sirius was alive, leaning against a wall in the corridor, bruised and grinning, with Lupin next to him. Lupin and Tonks were alive. Tonks was holding her hair at a strange angle because a curse had grazed her head, and the metamorph magus response had been to turn it bright orange, which she seemed delighted about. Harry sat on the steps of the entrance hall and looked at the sky. The sky was lightning, dawn after the battle. The same dawn that had come after the first battle, in his first timeline. The same indifferent, beautiful, continuing sky. Ron sat down next to him, Hermione on the other side. "Well," Ron said. "Well?" Harry said. "You've done this before," Ron said. "Not this version," Harry said. "This version was different." "Better?" Hermione said. Harry looked at the Great Hall, at the people in it, alive, most of them, the Count's so much better than the first time. Fred alive, Lupin alive, Tonks alive, Sirius alive, Snape alive. He was somewhere in the castle. Harry had seen him during the battle, moving through the fighting with the lethal competence of a man who was very done pretending. "Better," Harry said. "Not perfect, but better. Better is enough," Ron said. "Yeah," Harry said. "I think it is." They sat on the steps. The dawn came. The world, which had been holding its breath for years, began to exhale. 5 years later. Harry was 22 again. The same age he'd been when he died in Sheffield, in the other timeline, on a Tuesday in November. He'd been waiting for this day, not with fear, with the complicated awareness of a person reaching the age at which their first life ended, and crossing over into time they'd never lived before. He was at the Burrow. Tuesday evening. Dinner. The table was too small for the number of people at it, which was every Tuesday, and which nobody minded. Molly had made everything. Arthur was explaining a muggle device to Ron, who was pretending to be interested. Hermione was reading at the table, which Molly had given up trying to prevent. George was demonstrating a new product to Ginny, who was laughing. Fred was beside George, as always, the irreplaceable quality of the twins together, which Harry had saved, which Harry had changed a timeline for. Sirius was at the far end of the table, arguing with Lupin about something from school. The way they always argued about things from school, with the easy, worn-in quality of men who had been having the same arguments for 30 years, and who would have them for 30 more. Tonks was teaching Teddy to change his nose. Teddy was 3 years old and was, with complete concentration, turning his nose blue. Tonks was delighted. Harry sat at the table and ate Molly's food and listened to the noise and felt, not the loneliness of the cupboard, not the weight of the performance, not the corrosive isolation of knowing everyone and being known by none. He felt known. Ron knew. Hermione knew. Dumbledore knew. Sirius knew. Harry had told him in 7th year, and the conversation had involved a great deal of shouting and a great deal of hugging, and had ended with Sirius saying, "You're telling me I died falling through a curtain? That's the most embarrassing death in wizarding history." Snape knew. Harry didn't see Snape socially. Snape was not a man who did social. But they had an understanding, forged in the office where Snape had removed a piece of a Dark Lord's soul from Harry's head, and the understanding was enough. He was known. By the people who mattered. By the people he'd carried through 2 timelines. He was home. Not the home of the Burrow, though the Burrow was part of it. Not the home of Grimmauld Place, where he lived with Sirius and where the house had become, over the years, something other than the dark shrine it had been. The home of being surrounded by people who knew who he was. All of him, both lifetimes, the full complicated picture, and who had decided he was worth keeping. Teddy's nose went from blue to green. Tonks applauded. Teddy fell off his chair from the force of his own concentration, and Lupin caught him with the reflexes of a man who had been catching small falling children for 3 years. Ron reached across the table and took one of Harry's potatoes. "Oi," Harry said. "You weren't eating it," Ron said. "I was about to eat it." "You've been staring at everyone for 5 minutes," Ron said. "You're doing the thing." "What thing?" Harry said. "The thing where you look at all of us like you can't believe we're here," Ron said. "You do it every Tuesday." "I don't." "You do," Hermione said without looking up from her book. "Every Tuesday. It's quite noticeable." "It's been 5 years," Ron said. "Some things take longer than 5 years," Harry said. Ron looked at him. The Ron look. The one that saw everything and reported only what was necessary. "Yeah," Ron said. "Fair enough." He ate the potato. "But eat your dinner." Harry ate his dinner. The evening continued. The table was loud. The house was full. The people in it were alive and present and real and his. In the way that people are yours when you have loved them through 2 lifetimes and a rebirth and the grinding years-long work of learning to be real instead of performing. He was 22 years old. He was in his 2nd life. He was home. That was everything. He went back because the dying didn't stick, and the loving did. He carried 2 lifetimes because that was the price of the ticket. He saved them. Not all of them, never all of them, but these ones, these people at this table on this Tuesday, because saving them was the point of everything he'd done since the cupboard. The saving cost him 6 years of loneliness and the ongoing permanent work of integrating 2 lifetimes into one person who could sit at a dinner table and eat a potato without crying. He was working on the crying. He was getting better. He was home. Expanded threads the Hermione investigation. Years 1 through 3, Hermione Granger began building her case in the 2nd week of 1st year. She did not think of it as a case at the time. She thought of it as a list of observations about a classmate who didn't quite fit. The list lived in a notebook she kept separate from her schoolwork. A small leather-bound thing she'd bought in Diagon Alley that had an integral locking charm, which she'd thought was clever, and which she'd later discover was a charm that any competent 4th year could crack. Entry 1, September 8th. HP knows the castle layout. Walked directly to Transfiguration without wrong turns. Every other 1st year got lost at least twice in the 1st week. He corrected himself once, turned left, then immediately reversed to go right, as though he'd caught himself taking a route he knew but wasn't supposed to know. Entry 4, September 19th. HP's wand grip is wrong for a 1st year. Wrong as in too practiced, too efficient. Flitwick teaches the standard grip on day 1. Hop already held the wand that way before Flitwick demonstrated. He adjusted after the demonstration to match, loosened his grip slightly, made it less efficient, to look like he was learning. Entry 11, October 30th. Hop redirected a conversation between RW and himself in the corridor after charms. I was walking behind them. RW was about to say something unkind about me. I could tell from the setup I've heard that kind of setup before. Coach interrupted. Changed the subject to Quidditch. RW went with it. Coach looked back once and saw me. His face did something complicated. Relief, I think, but also something older, like he'd been planning that intervention. She didn't share the notebook with anyone in first year. She was still testing whether Harry and Ron were going to be reliable friends, and sharing her observation file about one of them with the other seemed like a fast way to destroy both relationships before they solidified. In second year, the entries accelerated. Entry 23, October 15th, HP's potions work is inconsistent in a pattern that is not random. Good days, competent, age-appropriate, unremarkable. Bad days, when he's tired, distracted, or not paying attention to the performance, significantly above second year level. Yesterday his potion was perfect before Snape had finished the instructions. He noticed, added an unnecessary ingredient to degrade it, and submitted a C-grade result. The degradation was deliberate. I timed it. Entry 31, January 9th. HP cast a non-verbal lumos in the dormitory corridor last night. I saw it through the crack in the door. He didn't use his wand. Non-verbal wandless magic is newt level at minimum. He is 12 years old. This is not possible under standard magical development theory. Entry 40, March 22nd. I have been correlating HP's behavioral anomalies against a framework of possible explanations. Current hypotheses. Natural prodigy with unusually advanced intuition partially explains ability, does not explain foreknowledge. Prophetic capability would explain foreknowledge, does not explain technical skill. Temporal displacement explains both foreknowledge, AND skill, but contradicts established temporal mechanics as documented in Hargreaves' Principles of Magical Time. Unknown. Insufficient data. Continuing observation. She was 12 years old and she was running a structured intelligence analysis on her friend. She was aware, being somewhat clinical about a person she genuinely liked, and the dissonance between the analysis and the affection was something she was managing without fully understanding. In third year, Ron broke the case open. Not intentionally. Ron didn't know about the notebook. But Ron had been watching Harry from his own angle. Not analytically. Not with Hermione's systematic framework, but with the instinctive people reading that was Ron's deepest and most undervalued talent. He already knows us, Ron said in November of third year. They were in the library ostensibly working on a history of magic essay. Hermione looked up from her textbook. What do you mean? She said. Harry, Ron said. When we met. On the train. First year. He already knew us. He'd just met us, Hermione said. He'd just met me, Ron said. But he looked at me like someone seeing an old friend. Not a new friend. An old one. Hermione put down her quill. This was consistent with her own observations. Entry 1. The relief on Harry's face when Ron sat down. Entry 11. The calculated intervention to prevent Ron from saying something that would hurt Hermione. The pattern of someone managing existing relationships rather than building new ones. I've noticed things too, she said. Yeah? Ron said. She told him the key observations, not the notebook or the hypotheses, but the key observations, the castle navigation, the wand grip, the potion's inconsistency, the non-verbal magic. Ron listened. He listened how Ron listened to things that mattered, with his full attention, his body still, his eyes focused. Temporal displacement, he said when she finished. She stared at him. How did you... He's done this before, Ron said. All of it. Hogwarts, the classes, us. He's been here before and he's doing it again. That contradicts. I know what it contradicts, Ron said. I don't care. I know what I'm seeing. You can't just... Hermione, Ron said. You've got a notebook full of data and 14 hypotheses or whatever, and you've been sitting on it for 2 years. I've got one idea and it fits everything. She opened her mouth, closed it, It fits, she said, not wanting to admit it. Admitting it. It fits, Ron said. The question is what we do about it. We ask him, Hermione said. He's not ready to tell us, Ron said. How do you know? Because he's been hiding it for 3 years, Ron said. If he were ready, he'd have told us. He's not telling us because he's afraid of what it'll change. Hermione looked at Ron with the expression she wore when Ron said something she hadn't expected him to say, which was the expression of someone recalibrating. Since when are you this perceptive about people's motivations? She said. Since always, Ron said. You just don't notice because I don't write it down. She sat with that. We wait, she said. Not happily. Waiting was not Hermione's preferred approach to unsolved problems. We wait, Ron agreed. But we watch. They watched. For 2 more years, through year 3 and into year 4, they watched Harry with the combined attention of Hermione's analytical framework and Ron's instinctive people reading. They catalogued without confronting. They adjusted their behaviour around Harry in small ways, covering for him when his performance slipped, redirecting conversations when he said things that were too knowing, providing the kind of unconscious support that people provide when they've decided to protect someone without being asked. Harry didn't notice this for months. When he finally did, in March of 4th year, when he caught Hermione deflecting a question from Neville about why Harry already knew a spell that hadn't been taught yet, he looked at her with the expression of someone who has been seen through a wall they thought was solid. You know, he said. We know something, she said. We don't know what. Ron too? Ron first, actually, she said. Harry looked at her, at the notebook she was holding, the small leather-bound one, the one with the locking charm. She held it up. 3 years of data, she said. 3 years, he said. Would you like to see my hypotheses? She said. How many? He said. 14. Ron has one. What's Ron's? Time, she said. He thinks you've been here before. Harry sat down in the nearest chair. He's right, Harry said. I know, she said. My data supports it. I just didn't want him to be right, because the mechanism contradicts 17 published sources on temporal mechanics. The mechanism isn't temporal, Harry said. I didn't go back in time, I died, and I woke up here. It's not a time turner, it's something else. What? She said. I don't know, he said. Neither does Dumbledore. Dumbledore knows? Since last summer, Harry said. I told him everything. She sat down across from him. The notebook was still in her hands. 3 years of observations, 14 hypotheses, the complete analytical framework of a mind that had been working on this puzzle since September of 1st year. Tell me everything, she said. He did. Ron and the chess problem, they played chess for 6 years. Across both timelines, and what Ron understood about Harry through chess was different from what Hermione understood through observation. Hermione saw what Harry did. Ron saw why he did it. The chess was the tell. In year 1, Harry played like a competent amateur, reasonable moves, occasional mistakes, nothing unusual for an 11-year-old who'd learnt the game recently. But Ron was not an 11-year-old who evaluated chess casually. Ron was Ron, for whom chess was not a game but a language, and the language Harry was speaking had an accent. You calculate too deep, Ron said, after a game in 2nd year. What? Harry said. When you're thinking about a move, Ron said. Your eyes track the board in a pattern. You're reading 4 moves ahead, sometimes 5. Is that unusual? Harry said. For a 12-year-old who's been playing for a year? Yeah, that's unusual. I do it. Dad does it. Percy does it sometimes when he's concentrating. First-time players don't. Maybe I'm naturally good at chess, Harry said. You're not, Ron said. I mean, you're good. But your strategic vision is better than your tactical execution. Your brain is planning at a level your hands can't keep up with. Harry looked at the board. Ron had identified the exact problem. Harry's 22-year-old strategic mind was running a game that his 12-year-old's practical chess skills couldn't fully execute. The disconnect was visible, to Ron anyway, as a gap between what Harry's eyes said he was seeing and what his hands said he could do. "You're playing with a handicap," Ron said. "Everyone who plays you plays with a handicap," Harry said. "You're that good." "Not that kind of handicap," Ron said. "You're handicapping yourself. Holding back." Harry said nothing. Ron set up the board again. "Play me for real," he said. "Whatever you're hiding. Show me." "Ron, I'm not going to tell anyone," Ron said. "I'm not going to ask questions. I just want one honest game." Harry looked at him. Ron looked back with the particular Weasley stubbornness that was the family's defining characteristic, the quality that said, "I have made a decision and I'm not changing it, and you can either work with that or waste time arguing." Harry played for real. The game lasted 90 minutes. It was the longest game Ron had played against anyone his own age, and it was, by Ron's subsequent assessment, the third best game of chess he'd ever played. Harry's strategic depth, the 22-year-old mind fully engaged, pushed Ron into positions he'd never encountered from a peer. Ron had to adapt. Ron had to think in ways he didn't usually have to think. Ron still won. Move 63. A knight sacrifice that Harry saw coming from move 58 but couldn't prevent because Ron's positional play in the mid-game had been flawless. "There," Ron said, when it was over. "There what?" Harry said. "That was real," Ron said. "Everything before that was performance." Harry looked at the board, at the position of the pieces, at the game that had just been the most honest thing he'd done in 2 years. "You're the best chess player I've ever played," Harry said. "In any context." "Both what?" Ron said. Harry didn't answer. Ron looked at him for a long time, and then he nodded, and he packed up the pieces, and the conversation was over because Ron had decided it was over. But the thing that had passed between them, the honesty, the game, the acknowledgement of something deeper than the surface, was not over. It was filed. Ron filed things differently from Hermione, not in notebooks, but in the architecture of his understanding of a person, which was rebuilt piece by piece over years, and which, once built, was permanent. From that game forward, Harry played Ron at full capacity. He still lost most of the time. That wasn't the point. The point was that someone had asked to see the real thing and Harry had shown it, and the showing had not destroyed anything. It had, in fact, built something. The night before the graveyard, the night before the third task, Harry was at the window of the Gryffindor dormitory at 2 a.m. He'd been standing there for an hour. The grounds were dark. The maze was being grown on the Quidditch pitch. He could see the hedges from here, dense and dark and full of things he already knew about. Somewhere in that maze, tomorrow, was a cup that was a portkey to a graveyard. And in that graveyard was a ritual that required his blood, and the blood was the price of a mechanism he needed to survive later. He was going to let someone cut his arm open. Tomorrow he had decided this. He had made the calculation, the Dumbledore calculation, the cold strategic arithmetic of acceptable sacrifice. He was 14 years old. He was also 26, if you counted both lifetimes. The 26-year-old understood the calculation. The 14-year-old's body was shaking. Ron, was behind him. Apparently awake, Ron slept like a log normally, but he'd been sleeping lighter this year, and Harry suspected it was because Ron's instincts had identified that something was wrong with Harry, and the instincts were keeping watch. "Go back to bed," Harry said. "No," Ron said. He came to the window and stood next to Harry. At the distance that meant I'm here and I'm not pushing. "The third task," Ron said. It wasn't a question. The third task, Harry confirmed. What's going to happen? Harry looked at him. At Ron, who knew something was different about Harry but didn't know the full shape of it yet, this was before the telling in Year 5, before Hermione's confrontation. Ron was working from instinct, from the chess games, from 2 years of watching his best friend not quite be what he appeared. Something bad, Harry said. How bad? I'll be hurt, Harry said. Not killed, but hurt. Can you stop it? Ron said. I could, Harry said, but if I do, something worse happens later. Ron was quiet. He was 14, and he was processing the concept of choosing a bad outcome because the alternative was worse, which was the kind of concept that most 14-year-olds hadn't encountered, and that Ron specifically was going to encounter repeatedly for the rest of his life. What's something worse? Ron said. I can't explain all of it, Harry said. Not yet. But there's a mechanism. A chain. Something that happens tomorrow is a link in the chain that leads to the thing that saves everyone. If I break the link, the chain doesn't hold. So you take the bad thing, Ron said. So I take the bad thing, Harry said. That's Dumbledore logic, Ron said. Harry flinched. What? Dumbledore logic, Ron said. The thing where you accept a cost now because the alternative is a bigger cost later. Dad talks about it sometimes. How Dumbledore makes decisions. He says it's the most dangerous way of thinking there is because it lets you justify anything. Your dad's right, Harry said. So why are you doing it? Ron said. Because the alternative is worse, Harry said, and because I know what happens if I don't. Ron looked at him. In the dark, by the window, his face was mostly shadow. You know, Ron said. Yes, Harry said. Not guess. Not think. No. Yes, Harry said. Ron was quiet for a long time. Can I come with you? Ron said. No, Harry said. The mechanism requires me to be alone. That's always the answer, Ron said. Every time something dangerous happens, you have to be alone. I know, Harry said. I don't accept that, Ron said. Not forever. At some point you're going to tell me what's actually going on, and at that point I'm going to be there. I know, Harry said. Promise me, Ron said. I promise, Harry said. Ron stood at the window with him for another hour. They didn't talk. They watched the grounds, and the hedges growing in the dark, and the sky that didn't know what was going to happen tomorrow. At 3 a.m, Ron said, Come on, you need to sleep. I can't sleep, Harry said. Then lie down and pretend, Ron said. That's what my mum says. Lie down and close your eyes, and even if you don't sleep, the lying down helps. Your mum's advice, Harry said. Works for everything, Ron said. Harry lay down. He closed his eyes. He didn't sleep, but the lying down helped. Ron was right. Molly was right. The Weasleys were right about most things, in Harry's experience, and the things they were right about were usually the simple ones. February of 5th year, the breaking point the night Harry nearly came apart, was a Wednesday in February of 5th year. Not from crisis. Not from danger. From the weight. The accumulated, compressive, ongoing weight of carrying 2 lifetimes of memory in a 15-year-old body while performing normality, while simultaneously managing a strategic operation with Dumbledore, while simultaneously trying to have actual friendships with people who now knew part of the truth, but not all of it. He was in the common room at midnight. The fire was low. Everyone was asleep. He was thinking about Fred. In the first timeline, Fred Weasley had died in the Battle of Hogwarts. He'd been laughing. He'd been telling a joke, George beside him, and the wall had come down and George's twin was gone in the space between one syllable and the next. In this timeline, Fred was alive. Fred was upstairs, probably asleep, probably in the middle of an elaborate prank that he was constructing with George for deployment the next morning. Fred was alive, because Harry had spent 4 years moving pieces on a board to create a version of events where that particular wall didn't come down on that particular person at that particular moment. And Harry couldn't tell him. He couldn't say, in another life you died laughing and your brother screamed and your mother broke and nothing was ever the same. He couldn't say it, because saying it would serve no purpose except to relieve the weight, and relieving the weight by transferring it to Fred was not something Harry was going to do. So he carried it. He sat in the armchair and he carried it, and the carrying was failing him. Tonight. Because the structures he'd built to contain the grief were overstressed. Too many people. Too many saved but don't know it. Too many conversations he couldn't have. He cried. Not well. Not the clean, cathartic crying that film showed. The ugly, gasping, can't breathe kind. The kind that comes when you've been holding something at full tension for years and the tension gives out in the middle of the night in an armchair when nobody's watching. Somebody was watching. Hermione was on the stairs. Dressing gown, book in hand, bare feet on stone. She'd been coming down for something. A quill, a reference, one of the 100 reasons she found to be in the common room after hours, and she'd found him. She sat down in the armchair next to his. She didn't say anything. She put the book down and she sat. Harry couldn't stop crying. He tried. The management, the control, the pulling it together that he'd been doing for years, and it wasn't working. The mechanisms had failed. What was left was the raw thing. The grief and the loneliness and the terrible weight of loving people who didn't know they'd been saved. Hermione waited. After a long time, 10 minutes, maybe more, Harry said, "Fred." "What about Fred?" Hermione said. In the first time, Harry said. "He died. In the battle. A wall. He couldn't finish." Hermione was quiet. "He was laughing," Harry said. "George was right there. Right next to him. And the wall? He's alive," Hermione said. "He's upstairs." "I know," Harry said. "I know he's alive. That's why She understood. He could see it in her face, the moment of comprehension, the recognition of what he was carrying. Something different from the grief of loss. The grief of prevention. The unnamed emotion of having changed an outcome that no one else knew needed changing. "You saved him," she said. "I changed the timeline," Harry said. "I don't know if the same wall comes down in the same place. I don't know if the battle goes the same way. I moved things. I moved enough things that maybe," Harry, she said. "You saved him." "I can't tell him," Harry said. "I can never tell him. I can never tell George or Molly or Arthur. I can't tell anyone what was going to happen because it would break them. Knowing what was supposed to happen. Knowing how close. You don't have to tell them," Hermione said. "You just have to let them live." Harry looked at her. 15 years old, in a dressing gown, at midnight, saying the thing that needed saying with the directness that was the most Hermione quality in the world. "Let them live," she said again. "That's the gift, not the knowledge, the life." Harry sat with this. "You're 15, he said, "and you're 27, she said. "And neither of our ages is the point right now." "What's the point?" "The point," she said, "is that you've been carrying the saved people list alone. Ron and I know you lived this before. We know you're carrying things. But we didn't know the specifics, and you haven't told us because you're afraid that telling us would, what? Burden us? Destroy you," Harry said. "The knowledge that people you love were supposed to die, that in another version of events, we can handle it," she said. "You shouldn't have to," Harry said. "That's not your decision," she said. "You don't get to decide what we can handle. That's the most arrogant thing about you. Not the performance, not the strategic planning, not the Dumbledore level chess. The arrogance of deciding that the people who love you are too fragile for the truth. Harry stared at her. I learnt that one from Ron, she said. He said it last week. He said, Harry decides for us. He always decides for us. And he's always wrong about what we can take. Ron said that? Ron is considerably smarter about people than either of us, she said. He's been saying it for years. We haven't been listening. Harry sat in the armchair. The fire was almost out. The common room was dark and cold, and Hermione was sitting next to him in a dressing gown, telling him that his best friend thought he was arrogant about protecting people. He's right, Harry said. I know, she said. I don't know how to stop, Harry said. You start by telling us things, she said. Small things. Specific things. Not the whole timeline, we know you can't dump all of it, but the things that are pressing on you tonight. The Fred thing. Tell us about Fred. I just did, Harry said. Tell Ron, she said. Tomorrow sit him down and tell him what you told me. He'll handle it, she said. He's Ron. He handles everything. Harry looked at the embers of the fire. Okay, he said. Okay, she said. She picked up her book. She didn't leave. She sat in the armchair and read. And Harry sat in his armchair and didn't read. And they stayed there until the sky lightened and the first years started coming down for breakfast. Harry told Ron the next day about Fred, about the wall, about the battle that had happened in another life and the death that had happened in it. Ron listened. He was quiet for a long time. George, Ron said. He was right there, Harry said. He would have. Ron didn't finish. Yeah, Harry said. Ron was quiet again. Then? You changed it. I changed what I could, Harry said. I don't know if it's enough. I don't know if the battle goes differently enough. But you changed it, Ron said. He said it with finality, the finality of someone who had decided what the important fact was and was not going to be moved from it. Thank you, Ron said. I didn't do it for thanks, Harry said. I know, Ron said. Thank you anyway. They sat in the dormitory. Ron looked at the window, at the grey February sky. Tell me the others, Ron said. What others? The other people who died, Ron said. In your first time, the ones you're trying to save, Harry told him. Not all of them, not every name on the long, terrible list, but the ones that mattered most. Fred, Lupin, Tonks, Dobby, Sirius, who was alive in this timeline but who had died in the first. Ron listened to each name. You've been carrying this for 5 years, Ron said. Since the cupboard, Harry said. Alone, Ron said. Not anymore, Harry said. Damn right not anymore, Ron said. Sirius and the stew living with Sirius at Grimmauld Place was the closest thing to a genuine home that Harry had experienced in either lifetime. Grimmauld Place was dark, hostile, and decorated in the aesthetic tradition of people who thought mounted house elf heads were a reasonable design choice. Because Sirius was in it. Sirius cooked badly. At first, the cooking of a man who had spent a decade eating prison food and who was reconstituting the concept of meals from first principles. The early attempts produced things that were technically stew in the sense that they contained liquid and solid components in the same vessel, but that bore only a theoretical relationship to food. It's fine, Harry said, eating something that might have been beef. It's terrible, Sirius said, eating the same thing. It's edible, Lupin said from across the table, which was the most diplomatic assessment available. Sirius improved. By the second summer, his cooking had reached competence, and by the third it had reached the personal quality of food made by someone who had found the activity genuinely satisfying. He made a lamb stew on Tuesday evenings that became, without anyone announcing it, the fixed point of the week, the thing that happened regardless of what else was happening. The meal that Lupin came for, and that Harry looked forward to in how you look forward to things that represent normalcy. You're strange about the stew, Sirius said, one Tuesday. What? Harry said. You eat it like it's the most important thing that's ever happened to you, Sirius said. It's stew. It's lamb and potatoes. It's good stew, Harry said. It's adequate stew, Sirius said. You eat it like someone who hasn't been fed properly in years. I was in a cupboard for 10 years, Harry said. That's not. Sirius's face shifted. That's not what I mean. I know about the cupboard. I mean, you eat it like someone who's been missing something for a long time and just found it. Harry looked at his stew. At the bowl, the spoon, the table, the kitchen in Grimmauld Place with its cleaned walls and its removed dark objects and its ongoing imperfect transformation from a shrine to bigotry into something resembling a home. I have been missing something, Harry said, for a long time. What? Sirius said. This, Harry said. Someone making me dinner. Sirius was quiet. Lupin, across the table, was also quiet in the particular Lupin way that meant he was absorbing something and deciding not to comment on it. Well, Sirius said. Tuesday's stew. As long as you want it. As long as I want it, Harry said. Yeah, Sirius said. Harry ate his stew. It was adequate. It was also, in the context of what it represented, a free man, a home, a Tuesday evening, the irreplaceable normalcy of someone caring enough to cook, the best thing he'd ever eaten. Neville in Harry's first timeline, Neville Longbottom's arc had been quiet and then sudden, years of seeming inadequacy, followed by the revelation that the inadequacy was a function of circumstance rather than character. The Neville who held the sword of Gryffindor and killed the snake was the Neville who had always been there. The world had just taken 7 years to see him. In this timeline, Neville was seen earlier. The divergence started in first year, when Harry, who knew what Neville was capable of, who had watched him lead a resistance and face Voldemort, deliberately included him. Not obviously, not with the heavy-handed inclusiveness of someone making a project of a shy kid. Harry just noticed Neville, made space for him, asked his opinion in herbology where Neville was brilliant, sat next to him at meals when the seating was open, treated him as a person rather than as background. The effect was gradual, but cumulative. Neville in second year was slightly more confident than the Neville Harry remembered. Neville was never going to be dramatic about his own capabilities, not at 12, not in any timeline, but the foundation was firmer. He raised his hand in herbology without checking if anyone was watching first. He spoke in defence class, which was something the original Neville hadn't done until fourth year. By third year, Neville was studying with Harry, Ron, and Hermione, not as a peripheral member, but as part of the group. His herbology knowledge complemented Hermione's textbook comprehension. Between the two of them, the study sessions on magical plants were genuinely formidable. You're doing it again, Hermione said to Harry, after a session where Neville had explained the properties of gillyweed with a confidence and clarity that had surprised everyone except Harry. Doing what? Harry said. Looking at him like you know something about him that he doesn't know yet, Hermione said. I look at everyone that way, Harry said. You look at Neville differently, she said. You look at him like he's important, in a way that's different from how you look at Ron or me. He is important, Harry said. Why? She said. What does he do? He kills the snake, Harry said. Hermione was quiet. The last Horcrux, Harry said. Voldemort's snake. In the final battle, Neville is the one who does it. With the sword of Gryffindor, he's the bravest person I've ever seen. In that moment, standing in front of Voldemort with a hat on fire and a sword in his hand. A hat on fire, Hermione said. It's a long story, Harry said. I imagine it is, she said. The point is, Neville is necessary, Harry said. Not because I make him necessary. Because he is, in any timeline. The sword comes to him because he's worthy of it. I can't make that happen. I can just make sure he gets the support he needs to be ready when it does. You're managing his development, Hermione said. I'm being his friend, Harry said. The management is a side effect. That's a very thin line, she said. I know, he said. I'm walking it. In the Battle of Hogwarts, Neville killed Nagini. The sword came to him, through the hat, the way it always did, the way it was always going to. He stood in the courtyard with the blade, and he struck, and the snake died, and the last Horcrux was gone. Afterward, Harry found Neville sitting on the steps with the sword across his knees. You all right? Harry said. I just killed a snake the size of a car with a magic sword, Neville said. I'm not sure all right covers it. Probably not, Harry said. Harry, Neville said. Yeah? I've known something was different about you for years, Neville said. I didn't ask because you seemed like you had reasons for not saying. I did, Harry said. Ron mentioned, not specifics, he wouldn't. But he said there was a reason you'd always looked at me like I was going to do something important. Neville looked at the sword. This was it? This was part of it, Harry said. The other part is just you, being you. Standing up when it mattered. I don't feel brave, Neville said. Brave people never do, Harry said. That's the whole trick of it. Neville nodded. He stood up and held the sword for a moment longer, the weight of it, the history of it, the fact that it had come to him, and then he handed it to Harry. Keep it safe, Neville said. I'll give it to Dumbledore, Harry said. Yeah, Neville said. He'll know what to do with it. He looked at the courtyard. At the dawn. I want to find Gran, he said. She'll want to know I'm all right. He walked away. Harry watched him go and thought about the 1,000-year-old sword in his hands and the boy who'd just used it, who had been worthy of it in every timeline, who had stood up when it mattered, because standing up was what Neville did. Some things were constants. The hat chose Neville. The sword chose Neville. The courage was always there. Harry was glad he'd been here to see it twice. Ginny the Ginny problem was the one Harry talked about least and thought about most. In his first timeline, Ginny Weasley had been the girl who grew from a shy first year with a crush into the fierce, brilliant, profoundly capable person that Harry had fallen in love with. The love had happened in 6th year, like a light switching on, and it had been one of the few uncomplicated goods in Harry's life. A relationship built on mutual recognition, on seeing each other clearly, on the chemistry of two people who were, in temperament and in courage, well matched. In this timeline, Harry already carried the memory of that love. And the Ginny of this timeline was 11. This was not complicated. It was not a dilemma. An adult mind, and Harry's mind was adult regardless of his body, did not develop romantic feelings for a child. The memory of loving 17-year-old Ginny did not translate into attraction to 11-year-old Ginny, because the person he'd loved did not yet exist. What it did create was grief. The ongoing grief of watching someone you've loved grow toward the person they're going to become, knowing that the version of them you loved is gone, not dead but erased, overwritten by the timeline changes that Harry had made. The Ginny who would grow up in this timeline would be shaped by different experiences. No diary, no chamber, no year of possession and terror. She would arrive at 17 without the damage that the first timeline Ginny had carried, which was better, objectively, measurably better, and which also meant she would be a different person. Harry was glad for her. He was also, in a way he couldn't fully articulate, mourning. He did not pursue her. He watched her grow up, From the shy girl at the Burrow to the increasingly confident, increasingly fierce young woman who was going to be extraordinary regardless of timeline, and he was her brother's friend. That was all. That was what he could be. Ron noticed. "You're careful with Ginny," Ron said, in 4th year. "She's your sister," Harry said. "Of course I'm careful. Not careful like polite," Ron said. "Careful like you're keeping a distance on purpose." Harry said nothing. The first time, Ron said. They were alone. The dormitory. "Late were you and Ginny, yes," Harry said. Ron was quiet. "That's why you're keeping the distance," Ron said. "She's 12, Harry said. Mentally I'm in my mid-20s. "It would be wrong. I wasn't going to say you should, I know," Harry said. "I'm saying it for me." "Is it hard?" Ron said. "Watching someone you loved become a different version of themselves?" Harry said. "Yes, it's hard. But you're not going to." "No," Harry said. "She deserves to fall in love with someone who's meeting her for the first time. Someone who doesn't already know the ending." Ron looked at him with the expression he wore when Harry did something that Ron found admirable and frustrating in equal measure. "You're a better person than I'd be," Ron said. "You'd do the same thing," Harry said. "I genuinely don't know if I would," Ron said. "You would," Harry said. "You're Ron Weasley." "That's not an argument," Ron said. "It's the only one I need," Harry said. In the years after the war, Ginny dated Dean Thomas, then dated other people, then married someone Harry hadn't known in his first timeline, a healer named Marcus Belby, distant relative of the Belby who'd been at Slughorn's dinner party. Harry went to the wedding. He was happy for her. The happiness was real. It was also, underneath, layered with the quiet grief of a love that had existed in another life and that had been erased by the same choices that had saved Fred and Sirius and Lupin and everyone else. The love was another casualty, a voluntary one. Harry didn't talk about it often. When he did, it was with Ron, late at night, over chess. "Do you regret it?" Ron said. "Saving everyone?" Harry said. "Losing her," Ron said. "I didn't lose her," Harry said. "She was never mine in this timeline. The person I loved doesn't exist anymore." He moved a bishop. "I regret that I can't have both, the saved people and the relationship. But if I had to choose, you chose," Ron said. "Yeah," Harry said. "I chose." Ron took his bishop. "You chose right." "I know," Harry said. "It still hurts." "Yeah," Ron said. "That's how you know it was a real choice." The Dumbledore chess game, 10 years later Harry, was 27. The same age he died in his first life, which was a milestone he'd been thinking about all year, and which arrived on a Tuesday like any other Tuesday. He went to Hogwarts. Dumbledore's office. Tea and chess, the way they did it once a month. The ongoing conversation between two people who had shared the weight of an impossible situation and who had become, in the process, something that was neither friendship nor mentorship, but occupied the territory between both. 27, Dumbledore said. "Yeah," Harry said. "The age you were when, yeah," Harry said. "How does it feel?" Dumbledore said. Harry considered this. He moved a pawn, like crossing a threshold, into time I've never lived before. Everything up to now I had a map. Even when the map was wrong, even when my changes had made it obsolete, I had the outline, the shape of things. "And now?" Dumbledore said. "Now I'm like everyone else," Harry said. "I don't know what happens next." "Welcome to adulthood," Dumbledore said. "I've been an adult since I was 10, Harry said. "You've been carrying adult responsibilities since you were 10, Dumbledore said. "Being an adult is different. Being an adult means not knowing. Everything before this point, even the uncertainty, even the degrading timeline, you had structure. Orientation, you knew the direction even when you'd lost the path. And now I don't know the direction," Harry said. "Now you're free." Dumbledore said. Harry looked at the chessboard. At the game that was proceeding in the way their games always proceeded, Dumbledore 3 moves ahead, Harry catching up, the outcome not yet determined but trending in Dumbledore's favour. "I've been thinking about why I came back," Harry said. "Have you reached a conclusion?" Dumbledore said. "Your theory," Harry said, "from when I first told you. That it was love, that the magic in the White Place, King's Cross, interpreted my desire to protect the people I loved and sent me back far enough to do it." "You didn't find that theory satisfying at the time," Dumbledore said. "I didn't find it precise," Harry said. "Love as a mechanism it's not an engineering specification. It's too vague. Love is always too vague," Dumbledore said. "That is its most reliable property. It does not follow the instructions you give it. It does not respect your calculations. It does not read your strategic plans. It just does what it does," Harry said. "It protects," Dumbledore said. "That is its function. Things that are alive don't have purposes in the engineering sense. Its function. What it does when it is given the opportunity to do something." "It sent me back to a cupboard," Harry said. "It sent you back to the earliest point where you could begin saving people," Dumbledore said. "Which happened to be a cupboard. With all my memories," Harry said. "Including the ones I'd rather not have." "Including those," Dumbledore said. "Love is not kind. It is not gentle. It is not concerned with your comfort. It is concerned with the survival of the people you love, and it will use every tool available, including your pain, to achieve that." Harry moved his knight. "Severus said something to me last week," Harry said. "What did Severus say?" "He said that carrying 2 lifetimes of memory is a form of curse damage," Harry said. "That the mind is not designed to hold that much, and that the holding is doing ongoing harm. He recommended I see a mind healer." "Severus gives excellent medical advice," Dumbledore said. "Are you going to take it?" "I've been seeing one for 2 years," Harry said. "Since after the battle." "Good," Dumbledore said. "And?" "And it helps," Harry said. "Not with the memories, those are permanent, but with the carrying. The healer says the problem isn't the weight. The problem is that I've been holding it in a fixed position for 17 years and my arms are tired." "A vivid metaphor," Dumbledore said. "She's very good," Harry said. "She told me to put the weight down sometimes, to stop carrying it, to let it sit." "Can you?" Dumbledore said. "On Tuesdays," Harry said. "At the Burrow, at Sirius's stew dinner. When I'm at the table with everyone and it's loud and Fred's alive and Lupin's alive and Sirius is arguing about school and Ron is eating too fast and Hermione is reading, on Tuesdays I can put it down. And the other 6 days?" Dumbledore said. "I'm working on those," Harry said. "Good," Dumbledore said. He moved his queen. "Check." Harry looked at the board. At the position, at the game that was once again trending toward Dumbledore. "You always win," Harry said. "Not always," Dumbledore said. "But frequently." "Was that supposed to be wisdom?" Harry said. "It was supposed to be accurate," Dumbledore said. Harry looked at the office. At the silver instruments and the portraits and Fawkes, who was between burnings and was currently a magnificent, full-plumed phoenix who regarded Harry with the complete bird-level indifference of a creature that had been around for long enough to not be impressed by much. "I'm going to go home," Harry said. "It's Tuesday. Give Sirius my regards," Dumbledore said. "I will," Harry said. He stood up. He looked at the board. "You're going to win in 4 moves." 3, Dumbledore said. 3, Harry agreed. He went to the door. "Same time next month?" "I'll be here," Dumbledore said. "As always." Harry walked through Hogwarts. The castle was the castle. The same corridors, the same moving staircases, the same ambient magic of a place that had been a school for 1,000 years and that continued to be one despite everything that had been done to it. Students moved through the halls with the particular energy of people who had not fought a war, and who, if Harry had done his job correctly, would never have to. He walked out through the gates and into the evening and apparated home. Home was Grimmauld Place, which was no longer dark. The walls were painted, the portraits had been managed. Mrs. Black's curtain was still necessary, but the rest of the house was light and warm and full of the evidence of people who had been living in it for years. Sirius was in the kitchen. "Stu, you're late," Sirius said. "Chess with Dumbledore," Harry said. "Did you win?" "3 moves from losing," Harry said. "Improvement," Sirius said. "Marginal improvement," Harry said. Lupin arrived at 7. Ron and Hermione at 7:30. Neville dropped by at 8 with Hannah Abbott, who he'd been seeing for 6 months, and who fit into the group with the particular ease of someone who was fundamentally kind and fundamentally unintimidated. The table was full. The stew was good, genuinely good now, after years of practice, the kind of food that was made by someone who had figured out what they were doing and who did it with love, which was the ingredient that Sirius would never admit to using but that was present in every bowl. Harry ate his stew. He listened to the table. He watched the people. Fred was at the Burrow, not here tonight, but alive. Tonks was at home with Teddy, but alive. Snape was at Hogwarts, but alive. Dumbledore was in his office, but alive. Everyone he'd tried to save was breathing. Not everyone. Different people had died in this timeline's war. People whose names he hadn't known in advance. People whose deaths he hadn't been able to prevent because he hadn't known they needed preventing. The weight of those deaths was its own gravity, its own ongoing cost. But the people at this table, the people in the directory of his heart, they were here. Ron looked at him across the table. "You're doing the thing," Ron said. "What thing?" Harry said. "The thing where you look at all of us like you can't believe we're here," Ron said. "You do it every Tuesday." "I do it every day," Harry said. "I know," Ron said. "But on Tuesdays I notice." "That's because on Tuesdays you're paying attention," Harry said. "I'm always paying attention," Ron said. "I just don't always tell you." Harry looked at his best friend. At Ron Weasley, who was 27 years old in this timeline, and who had been Harry's friend for 17 years by Harry's count, and whose essential quality, the observation, the loyalty, the stubborn, persistent, unshakable presence, had not changed across timelines or lifetimes or rebirths. "Thank you," Harry said. "For what?" Ron said. "For sitting down on the train," Harry said. "In first year, when you walked in and said, 'Is it all right if I sit here?' That was the most important thing that ever happened to me." Ron stared at him. "In both lives," Harry said. Ron's ears went red. This was the Ron response to emotion, the physical, involuntary display that he couldn't manage, and that Harry found across 2 lifetimes to be one of the most honest things about any person he'd ever known. "Eat your stew," Ron said. Harry ate his stew. The evening continued. The table was loud. The house was warm. Outside, London did what London did, vast, indifferent, full of its own business. Harry Potter was 27 years old. He had lived 2 lives. He had died once. He had carried the weight of both for 17 years, and he was learning, slowly with help, with a mind healer and a Tuesday dinner and the irreplaceable gift of people who knew everything about him and stayed anyway, to put the weight down sometimes. Not always, not completely. But on Tuesdays at the table with the stew and the noise and the people, on Tuesdays he could put it down. That was enough. That was everything. He went back because dying didn't stick, and loving did. He carried 2 lifetimes because that was the cost. He saved them, not all of them, never all of them, but these ones. These people at this table. Because saving them was the whole point of the cupboard and the performance and the years. The saving cost him. It cost him a childhood and a first love and 6 years of being the loneliest person in the world. It cost him in ways that a mind healer was helping him count and that Tuesday dinners were helping him survive. But the people at the table were alive, and he was alive. And it was Tuesday. And the stew was good. Let us know what you'd like to see next. Additional threads, the full telling. Harry told Ron and Hermione the complete truth in March of 5th year in the room of requirement on a Saturday afternoon when the castle was quiet and the room had provided 3 armchairs and a fireplace and nothing else. He started at the beginning. The cupboard. Waking up. The smallness of his hands. The Horcrux humming behind his forehead. He told them about the first 60 days, the testing, the planning, the decision not to act. He told them about the lists he'd made in his head, the branching consequences, the terrible arithmetic of changing one thing and risking everything else. He told them about Hagrid, about saying hello, Hagrid with too much familiarity and watching Hagrid's face register something that didn't fit. He told them about Ollivander, the Wands reunion, the word returning that had come out before he could catch it. He told them about the train, about Ron walking through the compartment door and Harry's plan dissolving in the first 3 seconds because seeing Ron again was too much, because the performance wasn't built to withstand that particular test. "You looked at me," Ron said. "On the train. I remember. You looked at me like I'd been waiting for you," Harry said. "Yeah," Ron said. "Like that." Harry told them about the sorting, the hat's recognition, the conversation about isolation and ambition, and the warning that trying to save everyone was more dangerous than trying to live forever. He told them about Quirrell, about going to Dumbledore, about giving away the Scar connection information years early, and watching Dumbledore's analytical mind close around the inconsistency. He told them about the years, the performance, the holding back, the constant management of what he said and how he said it and what a child would and wouldn't know, the exhaustion of it, the loneliness. He told them about the people who died in his first timeline. Fred. He told them about Fred and the wall and the joke. Ron's face went very still. Lupin and Tonks. He told them about the battle and the two of them lying side by side in the great hall and Teddy growing up without parents. Hermione made a sound. Sirius. He told them about the Department of Mysteries. The veil. The falling. The 2 years he'd spent after Sirius's death carrying the guilt of someone who had been lured into a trap that killed the person he loved most. He fell through a curtain? Ron said. The veil of death, Harry said. In the Department of Mysteries. It's a boundary between here and wherever people go. He went through, and he didn't come back. In this timeline, he's in the kitchen making stew, Ron said. I know, Harry said. That's what I changed. That's what all of it was for. How? Hermione said. Her voice was controlled, but Harry could hear the effort underneath. How did you prevent it? Specifically by freeing him early, Harry said. By getting Pettigrew captured before 3rd year instead of after. By making sure Sirius wasn't a fugitive, wasn't trapped at Grimmauld Place, wasn't desperate and restless, and making decisions from the psychology of a man who'd been in prison for 12 years and hadn't had enough time to recover. The visions, Hermione said. Voldemort sent you a vision of Sirius being tortured, to lure me to the Department of Mysteries, Harry said. To get the prophecy. I fell for it. I went. Sirius came to rescue me. He died. And in this timeline I used the mirror, Harry said. Called Sirius. Confirmed he was safe. Didn't go. That simple? Ron said. That's simple, Harry said, which is why it took me 5 years to get to the point of doing it, because simple changes are the ones with the biggest consequences. If I'd used the mirror in my first timeline, if I'd just checked, he'd still be alive, Ron said. He'd still be alive, Harry said. The room was quiet. The fire crackled. The 3 armchairs that the room of requirement had provided were exactly the right distance apart, close enough for intimacy, far enough for the kind of breathing room that a conversation like this required. Dobby, Harry said. What about Dobby? Hermione said. He died too, Harry said, at Shell Cottage, saving us from Malfoy Manor. Bellatrix threw a knife as we were disapparating, and Dobby was between us and the knife. Hermione was crying again. The quiet kind. The Hermione kind, where the emotions and the processing happen simultaneously. I can't save Dobby, Harry said. Not directly. The circumstances that led to his death were too specific, too dependent on a chain of events that I've already altered beyond recognition. The Malfoy Manor capture might not happen. The Shell Cottage escape might not happen. Dobby's sacrifice might not be required. But you don't know, Ron said. I don't know, Harry said. That's the thing. The further we get from my original timeline, the less I know. I've been operating on a map that gets less accurate every day. By now, by 5th year, half of what I knew is wrong or irrelevant or has been changed by the changes I've already made. Then why are you still? Hermione started. Because the half that's still accurate includes the Horcruxes, Harry said. The locations, the protections, the destruction methods. Those are fixed. Voldemort made them in the past, not the future. My knowledge of them doesn't degrade. And the rest? Hermione said. The rest I'm making up as I go, Harry said, which is what everyone does normally. The difference is that I had a map and I got used to having one, and now the map is mostly gone and I'm having to learn to navigate without it. Welcome to being a normal person, Ron said. I have never been a normal person, Harry said. No, Ron said. But you're getting closer. Harry looked at his 2 best friends, at the 2 people who had, in both timelines, been the fixed points of his life, the constants, the things that didn't change regardless of what else he altered or prevented or broke. I should have told you sooner, Harry said. Yeah, Ron said. You should have. I was afraid. I know what you were afraid of, Ron said. You were afraid it would change things. That we'd treat you differently. That knowing would make us careful, Harry said. I was afraid you'd be careful with me. We ARE going to be careful with you, Hermione said. You're carrying 2 lifetimes of trauma in a 15-year-old body. Being careful with that is not a weakness. It's what friends do. I don't want to be handled, Harry said. Then, don't think of it as handling, she said. Think of it as support structure. Engineering, you're a bridge under excessive load. We're the additional pylons. She just called us pylons, Ron said. Structural pylons, Hermione said. It's a compliment. Only from you, Ron said. Harry laughed. The genuine one. The one that came from somewhere deeper than the performance, from the place where the real Harry lived underneath all the management. He laughed, and the laughing did something to the weight, not removed it, but shifted it, distributed it, the way load distribution works when the pylons are in place. Structural pylons, Harry said. All right, Ron said. All right, Hermione said. The room of requirement, which had been listening because the room always listened, produced 3 cups of tea. They drank the tea. They talked about other things. School things. Normal things. The kind of things that 15-year-olds talked about when they weren't discussing alternate timelines and the resurrection of Dark Lords. They talked about Quidditch and owls and whether Neville and Hannah Abbott were going to finally sort themselves out. It was ordinary. It was warm. It was the most real thing Harry had done in 5 years. The Snape procedure. what it felt like the procedure happened on a Saturday evening in March of 6th year. Harry lay on the table in Dumbledore's office, and Snape stood over him, and the world narrowed to the point where Snape's wand touched Harry's scar. What the procedure felt like from the inside. First, the descent. Snape's mind entering Harry's not with the aggressive push of legitimacy as attack, but with the controlled, deliberate movement of a surgeon entering an operating theatre. Harry could feel the difference. The years of occlumency lessons in his first timeline had been adversarial, Snape hammering against Harry's defences. This was the opposite. This was Snape at his most skilled, moving through layers of consciousness with the precision that came from decades of practice and the focused care of a man who understood that a mistake at this depth would be catastrophic. Then, the arrival. The place where the Horcrux lived. Harry had always known it was there, the pressure, the wrongness, the sense of something other occupying space that should have been his alone. Now, with Snape beside him inside his own mind, he could see it clearly for the first time, the boundary between his soul and the fragment. It was not clean, it was blurred, degraded by 16 years of coexistence. The two souls had grown into each other the way roots grew through cracks in stone, not by choice but by proximity, by the slow geological inevitability of two things existing in the same space long enough. "Hold still," Snape said, through the connection. His voice was different inside Harry's mind, stripped of the contempt, the performance, the decades of managed hostility. Inside Harry's mind, Snape was just his skill. Just the surgeon. Harry held still. The cutting began. It was not pain in the physical sense. Harry's body was under sedation, monitored by Madame Pomfrey and Dumbledore. The pain was something else, the sensation of something being separated that had grown together, the specific, unique agony of losing a piece of yourself that was not yourself but that had been part of you long enough to feel like it. Harry could feel the fragment fighting. Not consciously. The fragment was not aware in the way that people were aware. But it was alive, in the Horcrux sense, and it did not want to be removed. It clung. It pulled. It dug into the edges of Harry's soul with the desperation of a parasite that was being extracted. Snape cut, precisely, carefully, along the blurred boundary line. Each cut separated a thread of connection. Each separation produced a sensation that Harry had no word for, grief and relief simultaneously, the feeling of losing and being freed in the same moment. 3 hours. 3 hours of Snape working at the boundary, cut by cut, thread by thread, with the absolute concentration of a man who was performing the most important thing he would ever do and who was not going to fail. At the end, the snap. The fragment came free. Harry felt it go, felt the sudden, shocking absence, the space where the wrongness had been. The pressure behind his forehead dissolved, the humming stopped. The connection to Voldemort, the link that had given Harry visions and headaches and Parseltongue and the invasive awareness of a Dark Lord's emotional state, was severed. The silence was enormous. Harry opened his eyes. The ceiling of Dumbledore's office, with its painted constellations, the silver instruments, no longer clicking. Snape, grey with exhaustion, sitting in a chair with his hands on his knees. "Is it?" Harry reached up and touched his scar. The scar was there. The scar would always be there. The physical mark of the curse that had failed. The lightning bolt that had become the most famous scar in the wizarding world. But underneath it, nothing. Empty space. His own thoughts, unaccompanied. "Done," Snape said. "What happened to the fragment?" Harry said. "Dissolved," Snape said. "When the connection to your soul was severed, the fragment had no anchor. It dissipated. No scream?" Harry said. The other Horcruxes screamed. "The other Horcruxes were destroyed by violence," Snape said. "Basilisk venom. Fiend fire, this one was removed by surgery. The result is the same. The process is quieter. Harry lay on the table and thought about what the quietness meant. For 16 years, for 28 years, counting both timelines, he had carried a piece of Tom Riddle's soul. It had been his first companion. It had shaped his dreams, his headaches, his connection to a man who had murdered his parents. It had been the reason for the prophecy, the reason for the scar, the reason for everything. And now it was gone. He waited for the relief to arrive. It didn't, not in the way he'd expected. What arrived instead was a complicated grief, the grief of losing an enemy you'd been fighting so long that the fighting had become part of your identity. You're feeling the absence, Snape said. It's normal, or it's expected. I don't know if anything about this is normal. How do you know what I'm feeling? Harry said. Because I was inside your mind for 3 hours, Snape said. And because I recognize the expression. It's the expression of someone who has just lost the thing they've defined themselves against. Harry looked at him. At Snape, who knew something about defining yourself against things, against the Dark Lord, against James Potter, against the life he might have had if one conversation in 5th year had gone differently. Does it get easier? Harry said. No, Snape said. But you get used to it. That's terrible advice, Harry said. I'm a terrible advisor, Snape said. I'm an excellent surgeon. Harry laughed. It hurt, the procedure had left his head sore, his thoughts slow, his emotions closer to the surface than he was comfortable with. But the laugh was real, and the realness of it was new, because for the first time in his life, in either life, the laugh was entirely his. No fragment. No passenger, no piece of someone else's soul influencing the emotional register. Just Harry. Thank you, Harry said. I didn't do it for you, Snape said. I know, Harry said. You did it for her. Snape's face did the thing it did when someone mentioned Lily without warning, the fractional movement of a mask that had been worn so long it was almost indistinguishable from the face underneath. I did it because it needed doing, Snape said. The motivation is irrelevant. The motivation is everything, Harry said, but I won't argue about it. Snape stood up. He was unsteady. 3 hours of deep mind surgery had taken more from him than he would admit. He walked to the door with the careful movements of a man managing his own exhaustion. At the door, he stopped. Potter, he said. Yes? Harry said. You are the most irritating student I have ever taught, Snape said, in any configuration. Thank you, Professor, Harry said. That was not a compliment, Snape said. I know, Harry said. I'm taking it as one anyway. Snape left. His footsteps echoed down the staircase. Dumbledore, who had been standing at the window throughout, turned to Harry. One remaining, Dumbledore said. Nagini, Harry said. Nagini, Dumbledore agreed. He looked at Harry, at the boy on the table, the scar still there but the fragment gone, the passenger removed, the silence new and enormous. How do you feel? Dumbledore said. Quiet, Harry said. Very quiet. That will take some adjusting to, Dumbledore said. Yeah, Harry said, but good quiet. The kind of quiet where the only voice in your head is yours. I have always found that kind of quiet to be the most useful, Dumbledore said. And the most frightening. Both, Harry said. Definitely both. He got up from the table. He stood in Dumbledore's office, and he was, for the first time in his existence, entirely himself. No fragment. No connection. No passenger. Just Harry Potter. 28 years old inside a 16-year-old body, carrying 2 lifetimes and 1 fewer Horcrux. He went to dinner. He sat with Ron and Hermione. He ate shepherd's pie and drank pumpkin juice, and listened to Neville talk about a plant that had tried to eat his homework, and Dean Thomas argue with Seamus about a Quidditch call, and the entire, loud, overlapping, completely ordinary sound of a Gryffindor table at dinner time. Nobody noticed that anything had changed. The scar was still there. Harry Potter looked the same. But inside, for the first time, it was just him. He ate his shepherd's pie. It tasted different. Everything tasted different. Everything was going to taste different from now on. This is the story of the cruelest gift and the best use of it that a person could manage. He woke up in a cupboard with 2 lifetimes of memory and a piece of a Dark Lord's soul in his forehead, and he spent 6 years alone with it. And then he spent the rest of his life learning to not be alone with it. He saved them. Not all of them, never all of them. But these ones. Fred, Sirius, Lupin, Tonks, Snape, Dumbledore, Cedric, the people at the Tuesday table, the people who made the stew and played the chess and sat in the armchairs and said, when the full truth finally came out, we're not going anywhere. The cost was a childhood. The cost was a first love. The cost was 6 years of the loneliest performance in wizarding history, maintained by a boy who was not a boy, in a school he'd already attended, surrounded by people he already loved. The payment was worth the purchase. He was home. He was known. He was putting the weight down, some days, in some rooms, with some people. That was enough. That was everything. That was the whole point of the cupboard.